All right, everybody. So, Lynn and Carl. Yeah, they'll be along with us. Okay, so many cycles of, in other words, this is for advanced people. We realize that it can't be accepted by everyone, nor can everyone be interested. Now, they can't be capable. Okay, so that's just how it goes. The solar Petri communicates with his shadow or reflection. This time he finally comes to the point where he equates them. The only thing is, if you want to know what really goes on, you can only get a general idea of communication from the word shadow, and you can get a very specific idea of communication from the word reflection, because all the parts and pieces that are dimensional at least exist. They're not dimensional anymore, but they exist. In other words, 3 dimensions become 2 dimensions, 4 dimensions become 3 dimensions, but at least you see the different parts. You have not lost sight of any aspect of the whole, even though their dimensional relation is not revealed.
But the connotation between shadow and reflection is there.
Huge. So, yeah.
Shadow personality, the shadow side.
Yeah, or shadow side, or just that you know something is there. Right. That's all, So let's just say that not so much of the monad gets through to the personality per se, but much of the soul seems to. Of course, how did I explain that yesterday? The psyche of the brothers of the shadow. That's it. Brothers of the shadow of the monad, meaning the brothers who deal only with the unprincipled substance and not with principles.
That's what that means.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It struck me that there is that connotation. Yeah, brothers of the shadow. So we have to, somewhere when we read about sometimes we'll study the Black Lodge and White Lodge in detail, and it will tell us about this huge Deva entity to which they are subject. They have been captured by this great Deva entity, and this Deva entity, it's much larger than they are, much more powerful than they are, and it basically expresses through all the dense physical plane.
And it is not called Yahweh.
Yahweh?
Yeah.
No name is given. No.
I think it was that we were talking in Denmark about it.
Well, Yahweh is another name for Jehovah.
Yeah. No, Jehovah it was.
No, Jehovah is different.
Yeah, but because we were talking about that, it's the same name than in Judaism.
No, Yahweh has a pretty good reputation, but Jehovah, according to Blavatsky, is a lunar god. Yeah, rather Martian in his nature, Martian and lunar, and does not have much heart development. And this is the tribal god of the Jews, Jehovah. It's not God Almighty, you know what I mean? That's a whole different thing. In other words, what Blavatsky is ever the philosopher, and the worst thing she can say about you is that you have an unphilosophical religion or God.
Yeah.
She says it's unphilosophical. See, so that's her final dismissal. Okay, the solar Petri communicates with his shadow or reflection by means of the sutratma. This is the energy thread, the life thread, which passes down through the bodies to a point of entrance in the actual physical brain. In studying Rule 1, we could summarize it simply yet profoundly under the following term: egoic communication, cyclic meditation, coordination, or Glamour. This is the summary of what we've been discussing. We've already said that the solar angel collects himself, scatters not his force, but communicates with his shadow or with his reflection. That's egoic communication. And we are recognizing these rhythmic streams of egoic energy sent forth to us as our higher impulses, our dreams, our visions, and so forth. When's the last time one of those hit you? I know. This morning in meditation, right? Yes. Okay. All right. The rules start off at A Treatise in Cosmic Fire with a brief summary of the process and a statement as to the nature of the White Magician. Okay, and he says, I would like in this first consideration of our subject to enumerate briefly the facts given in the commentary so as to demonstrate to the aspirant how much is given for his consideration and helping if he but knows how to read and ponder on what he reads. Now remember, we are all aspirants, and Master DK's specific task is to train aspirants for initiation. That's his work. Master KH has a larger kind of educational mission. But DK is into the technicalities, and he's taking people like ourselves in hand and teaching us what we have to do to achieve initiation, and to a certain extent group initiation. I think I should maybe say there was a group, the discipleship in the New Age group, called the Seed Group of 24, was established in November of 1939 when the other groups were discontinued and continued until 1946. And its purpose was to help those who were part of it achieve the second initiation. Of course, there was a problem. One of them had not achieved the first, so it kind of held back the whole group, and they weren't ready anyway. But the idea was that they could all perhaps work toward group initiation, and probably he'll take that up with them the next time. They were actually moving towards group initiation for the second degree. The other group was called the Ashram group, and it was a group of 14 in New York. They had to be in New York, and because DK was externalizing an aspect of his ashram, or attempting to, in New York, and Alice Bailey was handling the monthly discussions where they would come and discuss nothing but the ashram. That went on for some years, but and for them, the rays and the initiations was written.
Say it again?
For them, for the ashram group, the rays and the initiations was written. For the group of 24, all of Discipleship Volume 2 was written, because they were advanced students who were studying what DK called an elementary manual for initiation. All of them had taken the first degree, and now with what we see, next life or several, it's beginning to look a little closer than it might have looked before. We have a definite contradiction there. They would be in a position to take the second initiation together. It probably won't happen in this life. In the next life it probably happens. Yes?
Was the second, the 14 were some of the 24th, or there were different people?
There were some of the 24, but also they had to live in New York. That was a requirement. So that kind of tells us something about being together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, it wasn't the internet days, and I tell you, when you're communicating with someone on the internet, there's just no space. I mean, if you can see them, you can, it's true, you don't smell what perfume they have on, and you don't, there's certain senses that you just don't get. You don't touch them, but you see them, you hear them, and you
Sense them.
feel them. And I am quite somehow confident in how these things could be put together for real group development. Yeah. So anyway, the 14 were in New York, and some others were selected that were not in 24 for the 14.
And what was it?
And not always the best. Not always the best.
What was the years of
Somewhere from the early 40s to 1946. In 1946, he seemed to discontinue everything and just try to work hard with Alice Bailey to finish the books, because he basically said, look, you haven't used what I've given you, and you don't warrant further attention, and yet every year he gave them something. Second rate, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Very quickly, if one disciple did not go for the first initiation and held back the group, could you give just a minor example of how he held back the group by not taking the first?
Well, he technically, he wasn't accepted. No, he was too enthusiastic about the teaching. He was a sixth-rate personality, and he was so absolutely one-pointed that the only thing he ever talked about was the teaching. And he also thought he had scientific abilities, which he didn't. And he was basically filled with all kinds of glamours. He said, your soul was working through a very small personality, my brother. But DK said, he was the third ray soul. He said, but look, we're not ungrateful. You were the first to recognize Alice Bailey's work, and you financed it, because he was a businessman. And therefore, I have you in my ashram for your protection, because you almost went onto the left-hand path in your last life. He had a very peculiar ray structure. He was a third ray soul, sixth ray personality, fifth ray mind, hence his interest in science, first ray astral body, and a third ray physical body. Not a lot of soft lying.
What was his business?
I don't know, but a city in New York is named after his family, Suffern, New York.
Oh, yeah. I know that.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear that he was a second-ray monad. Just like so many of the third-ray or first-ray souls were, they were second-ray monads working with DK. As a matter of fact, sometimes you really felt from these, here's a guy with a first-ray soul, a fifth-ray personality, a fifth-ray mind, a sixth-ray astral body, and a seventh-ray physical body, and you felt his second ray all over the place. He was obviously a second-ray monad. DK held him very high. Of course, for the last several lives, his personality had been on the second ray, which really helps, In other words, you do have momentum from your past lives, no question about it. So when people go to analyze you, you are presenting an energy which you're not working on right now, but it's there, and that's confusing. That's just confusing. So we have to see more in order to be able to judge
And possibly
accurately.
know that person somewhat.
Yes, and you have to know you have to know what is momentum and what is current focus. There's a difference. A person can be, sort of infused with all kinds of energy that they're not paying attention to. It's just there from the past. What they're paying attention to is different. Here's an example. The group astrologer was named William Miller. He was a second-ray soul, sixth-ray personality, first-ray mind, first-ray astral body, seventh-ray physical. He worked astrology for everybody. It's a third-ray thing. He says, and he has no third ray. And DK says, look, your third-ray personality was prominent in your last life, and now it's even stronger than your present sixth-ray personality. The leftover third ray is even stronger than your sixth ray that you're current. Because look, you might start working on a new ray, that you haven't had for a while. It could be relatively weaker than this thing that's like a boxcar hitting you from behind.
So that's why it's so difficult to perceive a person's true makeup.
Yeah, from that perspective. Yeah, I agree with you. I've had the same problem with my fourth ray and sixth ray. I just have for many lives been on the fourth ray, you know what I mean? And I still demonstrate it all the time. It's just inherent in me. But I am, a true blue fanatic. There's no question about it. I enjoy it, and I do it. So it's a blend of the fourth and the sixth ray in some way, Of course, that comes right out of Aries with its Mars and Mercury. Anyway, moving on. So here's what DK says that he gives you. He says, pay attention to how much I've given you. The white magician is one who is in touch with his soul. Consciously so. That eliminates a lot of people right there. 2, he is receptive to and aware of the purpose and the plan of his soul. Are we? Well, to a degree we are. 3, he is capable of receiving impressions from the realm of spirit and registering them in the physical brain. Well, what does he mean? I mean, in other words, is he speaking of the spiritual triad? Because that which is truly spiritual is found in the realm of the true ego, the spiritual triad. In other words, remember what DK calls the spiritual plane? Which one it is? It is. It's Atman, the spiritual plane. So that rather dignifies the word spiritual when we just throw it around. That person's spiritual. Well, is he really? Okay. It is stated also that white magic works from above downward. DK is summarizing here. He does a good job of this. Works from above downward, is a result of solar vibration and therefore of egoic energy. Without that egoic energy, no white magic. C is not an effect of the vibration of the form side of life being divorced from emotion and mental impulse. Lower mind, right? Lower mind. So, if you find a magician getting wrathful and worked up and, overly into the concrete mind, it's not white magic. Okay, 5. The downflow of energy from the soul is the result of constant internal recollectedness, let's just say, not only by the solar angel, but by the magician. Concentrated one-pointed communication by the soul with the mind and brain, handled from the soul's point of view. Steady meditation upon the plan of evolution. Now that seems so important, doesn't it? Because you're going to create something, but what are you going to create? Is it really going to be in line? If it's not in line, it's not white magic. In other words, we've got a lot of magic going on today. Everybody's creating everything, and some people are very effective. Is it in line? Usually the law of repulse has to strike. I've heard everybody. Ray 1. I've studied everything, but it's all materialistic. Or I've wrapped myself in a cocoon, Ray 3. Or I'm just fighting, I love harmony, but I love it for myself. So what's the harmony of the plan? Or Ray 5, I've discovered many secrets, but not the secret. What is the secret? Relates to the plan. Or Ray 6, my God is out there and I've forgotten the God in here. So wake up to that. And Ray 7, I can't arrange the room. I look before the room and I keep on arranging and rearranging the room, and I've forgotten the room in back of me, which has perfect order in it. So then you have to revolve under the arch, the magnet revolves you, and then you see the archetypal room, and then you're able to rearrange this other room. It works through your heart. So usually the law of repulse has to strike before you are ready to really meditate upon the plan and evolution. After that, you care about first things instead of what your little personality wants, right? Number 6. The soul is therefore in deep meditation during the whole cycle of physical incarnation, which is all that concerns the student here. But remember, pulsations, because some streams occur in a cyclic manner. And that's why DK tells us, look, you better meditate regularly, because if you don't, you're not giving your soul the chance to get through to you in a rhythmic manner. The soul will take advantage of these things. He says some of you would be shocked if you realized how little time or opportunity you give your soul to get through to you. And by that we mean the ego solar angel. Okay?
I think we can relate those to lunar cycles also.
You mean, like, say a little more.
How the 2 weeks prior to the full moon is a period of increasing illumination, and then
I see what you mean.
Following that is a period of manifestation.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and I agree with you. Yes, you can.
You're not giving your soul enough time.
Enough time or opportunity to get through to you, to actually contact you, to actually come through, so its influence actually reach you. You're not, you are deflecting. You are not there. You're not showing up. The soul is trying to work, and you're not there. You're not in a receiving mode.
You said something about this rhythmically. And
yes.
The soul that's rhythmically
That's right.
to do this.
That's right.
And you should set up a
Both. And maybe the soul will synchronize with you.
It just struck me all of a sudden to wonder if one sometimes doesn't naturally meditate just in the dream state. Because I so often receive many amazing impressions during the dream state.
Well, they said we go to class, and maybe these classes are meditative experiences, and it's true what you say. We do receive many results of attunement of some kind. I mean, the dream state is long. It's like 8 hours, and all kinds of stuff goes on. A good, bad, and indifferent. So it's probably, when you bring through something of value like that, it may be that you are in a more meditative state. If you have opened certain astral chakras and are no longer the victim of the astral plane, but can manage yourself upon the astral plane. A lot of our tests between the first and second initiation are self-management upon the astral plane. Earth, water, fire, and air tests between the first and second.
On the astral.
That's on the astral plane between the first and second. How many?
Not all reading is on the astral.
Well, then,
there can be a shift.
It depends on if we want to call it dreaming. There are, DK talks about mental dreams, in a way, yes. And maybe some causal impressions too, although it's hardly called, dreaming. He has a wonderful section in esoteric psychology where he gives you the 10 sources of dreams and the ones that are useful or not useful. Yeah, it's a marvelous section, and you begin to realize that a lot of your dream life is rather inconsequential brain activity. But sometimes the soul really does make its impression, And when the soul wants to wake you up, it will. If the soul has something to impress upon you, something will happen, bang, you're up, and at that point, you've got to write it down. It's impactful. So, a lesson is being taught. A lot of you have studied that, haven't you, those 10 sources of dreams in esoteric psychology class and so forth?
In volume 2?
Yes, volume 2. Yes. Let's just say, I'll show you. I'll probably find the place. Dreams, brain, activity. Dreams based upon brain activity. And here it goes through them. This is starting on page 499. And it gives wonderful explanations. Dreams of remembrance. Dreams which are recollections of true activity, just like you're walking down the street. Dreams which are of a mental nature. That's what you were talking about, maybe, Diane. Dreams which are records of work done. Like if you're in class and you're studying or working, whatever, Like if you're a silent, what do they call those? The invisible helper. Did I skip something here? Telepathic dreams, which are records of real events, which are telepathically communicated from one to another. Some friend or relation undergoes some experience. He seeks to communicate it to his friend at the moment of crisis. He thinks powerfully, etc. Okay, we can study these sometime. Number 7, dreams which are dramatization. They are a symbolic performance by the soul for the purpose of giving instruction, warning, or command to this instrument of personality, man on the physical plane. I think some of us are familiar with this. These are dreams which you say, I must interpret this dream. It has symbolic significance for me. Dreams concerned with group work. Dreams which are records of instruction. A master gives this to his accepted disciple. Dreams connected with the world plan. And these are the 10 types of dreams he gives. And before we should say too much about the interpretation of dreams, we should certainly know what these 10 types are so we can categorize them and, give only warranted attention to what warrants attention. Yeah. I would recommend spending an evening on that, because that's really, a group evening. It's so instructive, because after all, it's 1/3 of our, experience, and stuff is coming through, and what does it mean, so let's find out where it's from. All right. So the soul is in deep meditation during the whole cycle of physical incarnation. Especially is this so for a disciple, because the soul has become a downward-looking soul, It's a bit like, let him do this, he's not ready for training. Okay, now we'll take you in hand. Now you're ready for training. Okay. This meditation is rhythmic and cyclic in nature, as is all else in cosmos. The soul breathes, and its form lives thereby. So I suppose if you want to die consciously, it has a whole lot to do with holding your breath. Well, if you do it long, I think if you do it long enough, you're right in there. All right. Number 8. When the communication between the soul and its instrument is conscious and steady, the man becomes a white magician. Other than that, we're just doing magic. We're saying old words. Master Moria, who was one of the greatest of all magicians, as Moses and Solomon, warns against magic. He's really so strongly against this mindless repetition of old formulas. So you know how it is, when you get these words of power and you see certain things that people have said and they tell you it's been effective and all the rest of it, and then you start performing these things, it probably leads nowhere but to trouble. We need, it's as if the inner source of the magical knowledge has been cut off, and what remains is all the result of what they knew without being animated by that source. We need to come back to the source and then work out the outer thing again, I think.
There's a newness that has that newness and freshness that we were talking about earlier. Otherwise, it's just a repeated thought.
Exactly. And there are tainted formulas. Like he told how the swastika could no longer be used at this time, because of its association with the Black Lodge and so forth. All right. Therefore, the workers in white magic are invariably, and through the very nature of things, advanced human beings, for it takes many lives to train a magician. Now, it may not be the destiny of all of us, but in a sense, every member of the spiritual hierarchy is an esoteric psychologist. Every member of the spiritual hierarchy is a white magician. It doesn't make any difference if that's their specialty or not. We all will have those abilities to a degree. Number 10, the soul dominates its form through the medium of the sutratma or life thread, and through it vitalizes its triple instrument, mental, emotional, and physical, and thus sets up a communication with the brain. See what DK has done. He's just gone from cosmic fire into white magic, and he has just enumerated the different sections that he's just given us, basically. He's all for summaries, and he says that every student that is studying a chapter should make a valuable summary of what is foregone, and he says it will save us much looking back. Much looking back. And I can attest to that, and probably everyone here can as well. We are in school. He's Gemini. Master DK is Gemini and a lot of Taurus, I think, although it's hard to tell exactly from that. But Gemini he is qualitatively for sure. And basically, the Tibetans had some of the greatest spiritual universities that have ever seen the light of day in the modern world. And we're still in that. A lot of us are on the second ray, and we are perpetual students. We are light carriers. We carry the light for the sake of those who need that light. It says, build now an ark translucent, which can reveal the light, O builder of the ark, and by that light and through that light you will reveal the lighted way. So you carry the light and you reveal the lighted way. And a lot of people say, well, I went to school and it's over now. Now I want to live. But for second-rate types, going to school is a lot like living, which is hard to explain to those who want to live in a different way.
That sounds like the Cancer mantra, too. I build a lighted house very well.
Exactly. I build a lighted library and therein read. Yeah. Of course, that may have been the problem with Tibet, very second-rate in some ways, and they, quite exclusive. And they were the first ray in some inexplicable way drove them out into the world so that their wisdom spread all over the world. It may not have been what they liked, but it's had a huge effect on millions of minds.
It's amazing how the Dark Lodge, in fact, through their selfish dealings, actually promotes.
Exactly.
The Adolf and the Chinese, all of these selfish moves on other people force them to move out, and they propagate through them. That's right.
And they're picked up by the hungry and those who really need it. Yeah. I remember a movie about the Dalai Lama, and it actually showed him in it. He says, Mao, he said, he was so nice to me, so kind. But by the end of the interview, I realized he was the enemy of the Dharma. This was his final word, and then he left and made his own escape into the world. And look at him now. This is like a fourth-degree initiate in action. Or very close to that level, I would say. All right.
What were you saying, Michael, back to DK saying the student should make value study what has forgone, it would save you much time?
Yeah, much looking back. Much looking back. Save you much looking back. It is, when you don't make your summary, then you always say, what did I read? What was that? So he's all for crystallizing things. He does it himself. He gives us these marvelous mnemonics, He all often starting with the same letter. like dispassion, discrimination, decentralization, all these things with DDD or I, things that are mental posts,
Individualization, initiation, identification.
Yeah, exactly. And, isolated unity, isolated identity, isolated individuality. But, he knows how the mind works. By the way, apparently Giordano Bruno was a master of memory. In the old days, they used to build these castles of memory. They used to have memory techniques, and Bruno was amazing at that, I kind of wonder whether he wasn't on the third ray after all. Third ray, sixth ray, something. I tried to do his horoscope, being interested from some of the images of him, why he should be sacrificed in that way. And it looked like it was loaded with Scorpio and Pisces. Yeah, it really looked like, I couldn't say what initiation it was, but he was certainly brilliant. He was a philosopher, a Hermetic philosopher, and had this incredible expanded view of the universe way beyond his time. And so I wonder, was he taking the fourth initiation? I wonder. Or was it just, he was a playwright, but what got him in trouble was his acid tongue. See, he criticized to devastating effect a number of the church people. And being impartial and saintly, they killed him. And you know what they did? And when they led him to the stake, they gagged him so he couldn't speak. Because he, at his final condemnation, he had said, I'll paraphrase, because I think that your fear of the sentence you have given me is greater than my own. Something like that. Your fear is greater than my own. But he said it much more eloquently. So naturally they gagged him. They don't want any memorable statements at the stake, do they?
Yeah.
So that's very tough. But he's probably a master of some kind. And Annie Besant thought she was Giordano Bruno. She thought she was Giordano Bruno. But when I look at the vibe, I don't know. He was so third-ray speculative, and she was not. I mean, she was political and scientific, and he was different. Something should survive from one life to the next. Okay. Anyway. Through the brain, consciously controlled, man is galvanized into intelligent activity on the physical plane. So ego to brain, soul, mind, brain, this is what we want, with the astral body presenting no out-of-aligned vehicle to distort. The above brief analysis of the first rule for magic is a brief analysis, and I would like to suggest that in the future, as the students meditate on the rules, that they make such an analysis themselves. And he says the same thing in esoteric astrology. He gets to the end of the Aries chapter, he makes you a nice list of about 13, 14 points, and he says, do this for every chapter. It will save you much. And do we do it? No, we don't do it. And we look back much. Okay.
Well, why didn't you tell us years ago?
Well, how long have we been reading the Tibetan?
I don't remember reading
Missed that page every single time.
Yeah, it's funny how you overlook that thing, Yeah. It's true, Yeah. And in one of the very early books, there's a watermark which only comes visible to you if it's moistened by a tear. And it says, join the Moria Federation. Yes, I know. One could almost accuse me of proselytizing.
How many people do you have for the second year?
They've been joining all along. So it's hard to, maybe 20 new students, something like that. Something like that. They're coming, and all of a sudden I'm getting when do I have to have my application in? Well, I know it's going to happen now. We're just going to get inundated. At the last minute when we're trying to help everybody with their papers, all the new applicants are going to come in. So, okay. So we have about 100, 80, 90 people working all together, something like that. It's not in the numbers, obviously. The quality has to come first. And that's hard to sustain because people have a lot of different ideas, but generally if you have an atmosphere of friendship in the group a lot of things can be handled, I think. So we have some good new students coming in, and now we've changed the application. We're very straight with people, we're very tough about what's going to be expected of them. So a lot of people hesitate, and they rightly should. I think so. All right, anyway, that as students meditate on the rules, they make such an analysis themselves. If they do this during their consideration of each rule, they would approach the whole matter with greater interest and knowledge. They will also save themselves much looking back and reference. It will be seen from the consideration of the above analysis that a very clear summation is given. That the student is started in his study of magic with a brief understanding of the past situation, his equipment, and the method of approach. I think we should all really develop beginner's mind when it comes to this stuff. With every one of these things, with healing, with magic, with astrology, beginner's mind, with studying the rules. We are at the beginning, let's just face it. No matter how much we consider ourselves to be the so-called learned aspirant, we are at the beginning. And in another couple of 100 years, things will be, they will blossom. We're in training. We're in training now for real work in the future. It's never too late. That's why we certainly don't cut off at the age of 42. Well, we have very few students. But, if you cut off at the age of 42, so you've got to be between 21 and 42, you're not preparing for the next incarnation when these schools are really going to, be their thing. Really come into it. How many of you are planning to attend?
Attend what?
The new schools in the next century. Yes, I thought so, yes. Have you chosen your school, by the way? Have you decided? California College? What do you say, huh? Up in the mountains somewhere? Okay.
Ohio Lincoln Center.
Well, we do have mountains here. I mean, there are mountains of a kind, Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't necessarily have to be the Sierras, perhaps. Okay, I've got my eyes set on the Irish school myself. Yes. It might take a little while to get there. We're sending you to the Egyptian school, then we'll email each other. All right.
What is the Irish school calling you? Why?
Well, I have such a feeling for that stuff, It's a second-rate school. It's primarily a second-rate school, Bodhisattva school. But I'm sure the music's going to be great. That's probably what's calling me. In the Egyptian school, you specialize in serpents.
Yes.
And she's got a good start, I must say. It's a first-rate school. It's a very cult first-rate school.
What would the California school specialize in?
I don't know.
Comprehensive college.
It's broad. It's synthetic. It's got a lot of second ray in it, I'm sure. And this country has sixth ray too. The middle school in the Midwest oftentimes think of the efforts of Carol Parrish as kind of in that direction. Taking those people who have been really raised in the church and giving them a smooth transition into the esoteric way. She's really good at that. She's made a church, for heaven's sake. Light of Christ Community Church. I guess that's what it's called, right? So, it'll be most interesting. And in Finland, we're right between a rock and a hard place. We're between Russia, advanced school, and Sweden on the other side, the preparatory school. So we kind of feel we're in a bridging mode there, helping these things get together.
Do you have any contact with Russian people?
We used to have quite a bit of contact, and we could have contact at will. It's just that when you make contact, you better have something to offer and have a program and know what you're doing. I would really like to see, the regimentation of many students. I know that's not an appealing word, but I would like to see the regimentation of many students in the next few years. I would like to see them brought in, made to submit themselves to a rhythm, and accomplished through really disciplined rhythmic study. A regimentation. It goes along with areas, it's seventh ray kind of thing. I would like to see people stop expanding themselves in all kinds of dilutions, if I can say that. There's all kinds of things that you can do that are kind of fun and kind of related, but I'd like to see people really get a hold of themselves using Vulcan and the first ray and really work themselves into a condition of real excellence. And then, look what you do when you go to one of those Tibetan universities. It's like 18 years of study or something. You are made to master all kinds of foundational matters. You come out and you know what you're doing. So I think more rigor is needed in the esoteric community. I would like to see that rigor put into place. I don't think I'm asking too much with that. I mean, I think DK would ask much more. He's always talking about whipping yourself into shape, that nice second-rate master. You second-rate master, you. Why are you using a word like whip? Okay. So I would just like to see a new level of discipline applied even among us who are older, than 42. But I would like to see us withdraw our points of extension. And instead of being 60% effective, maybe, to become 90% or 95% effective by really pulling it together and making it happen. Anyway, that's a little digression. That's what I'd like to see. Okay. Let us realize from the start the simplicity of the idea intended to be conveyed by my remarks hitherto. Just as in the past, the instrument and its relation to the outer world has been the paramount fact in the experience of the spiritual man, this is so important. So now it is possible for a readjustment to take place wherein the outstanding fact will be the spiritual man, the solar angel, or soul. Well, basically he's telling us, and Alice Bailey said it, not making herself very popular, that the Theosophical movement focused an awful lot on the probationary path. And it really focused on, a lot of purification and getting everything ready in the instrument. Now, he says, you're shifting your center of realization. You're walking around as the soul in incarnation, having the human experience, instead of the human being having a soul somewhere. Okay. So, readjustment. Okay. It will also be realized that his relationship through the form side will be to the inner as well as the outer world. And in that, he would just be imitating the hierarchy, wouldn't he? What's the hierarchy doing right now? Facing the outer world and man and Shambhala at the same time, right? So we have to have this Janus-like perspective, looking in two directions simultaneously. And we can do that if we really master the higher aspects of the Geminian way of life. Gemini is such an important sign in this whole ageless wisdom propaganda period. DK, Mary Bailey, Alice Bailey, Foster Bailey, Pisces, Gemini, and not HPV. She didn't have any Gemini in her chart. But she certainly had the Leo and the strength to bring it forward. Okay. Man has included in his relation only the form side of the field of average human evolution. We have to introduce a much wider figure. He has used it and been dominated by it. This is the form, okay? We don't want to be dominated by the lunar gods. He has also suffered from it and consequently in time revolted. Do you ever find at the root of your being a huge rebellion? If you say yes, you'll be in line with the planetary logos. Yes, anybody? Okay. Because he has the psychology of the divine rebel. In other words, he doesn't like his situation. He doesn't like the servitude in which he exists. He wants to be free. It's a first-ray attitude. And we have a first-ray monad with our planetary logos. Okay, so there is oftentimes, it indicates the turning of the wheel, the reversal of the wheel that you made at some point in your life when you said, no more of this. I won't go that old way anymore. I will turn around, I will repent, turn around as they say. I will head another direction. He has suffered from the form and consequently in time revolted. Now you might say, actually revolt in a way does kind of mean turn around, volvere, to turn. Yeah. What did the prodigal son do? He found himself eating food that was less than the pigs were fed. So he just got tired of eating the husks of life and said, in my Father's house even the servants have more than this. Or was it the animals? I forget. Someone of low degree had more in his Father's house than he was having out there. Through utter satiety from all that pertains to the material world, do you think that lives of satiety lie behind you? You have an intimation of that. Of just being
satiation, of calmness and everything.
Satiation means you're fed up. You're sick of it. So, I remember my old teacher saying that even a fly can be an initiator. Anyway. Yeah, but that's it.
But that's why. Initiated, yeah.
So anyway, but stay over there, please. All right. I have honey in my tea, Whoop, he's coming. Whoop. All right. So, utter satiety. Do you ever? So this satiety is a Pluto experience, being fed up. In other words, we're told under Pluto, you can't go backwards. So, is there any point of satiation which is a protection to you? I don't care if I die, I won't do that. That kind of thing. Some things a person will not do anymore. And maybe you detect that in your life somehow, somewhere, even though you're well beyond that at this point, right? Sometimes you can remember because you recapitulate. Here's some of his D's. He's going to town now. Dissatisfaction, disgust, distaste, and a deep fatigue are very frequently characteristic of those who are on the verge of discipleship. So let's just go out there and look for all the depressed people in the world. But I think we'd have to note that something else trying to happen, something else coming to birth. Disgust. It means I can't eat this anymore. I can't taste this anymore. This fails to fulfill. So, and a lot of people feel this when they have their midlife crisis, their well-earned midlife crisis. They feel, I can't do this job anymore. It will make me sick. Right? Okay.
And it does make you sick.
That finishes it. Well, that's it. And when you notice that it's really happening, then that's it. You realize that there's no future in it, and you could just die in the job, Or sometimes when people fail to get divorced, they, as they say, die in the marriage. In many, many different ways, So, that's a difficult thing, of course, but the question is with Pluto, how long do you stay in a situation before you move on? Just because you're attached to the situation.
The glamour of continued circumstance, he calls it.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Where'd you get that? Who said that?
Psych 1, I think.
Really? The glamour of continued circumstance.
I like that.
I like it too, but I wonder if I've ever read it.
The fact that as you stay in that pattern, you can actually become almost physically nauseous. It's so repelling to the soul as the personality walks in.
There it is. Brother of mine, I find it most difficult to give a name to the glamour which holds back the full expression of your soul. I might call it the glamour of continued circumstance. This leads to an almost unavoidable construction of a wall of small and unimportant events, of negligible contacts, of monotonously regulated and determined duties carried forward year after year because they constitute your duty and life function and also provide the wherewithal whereby the needs of life can be met. Is this a Virgo? Well, someone with seventh ray strong, someone with an earth sign strong somewhere.
Well, I can totally relate to that.
DLR. No, it's not a Virgo.
What thing?
DLR. This is
DLR. I forget who DLR is. Is he that fifth ray guy? Is he the entomologist studying insects? Let's just see. What page is this? Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1, page 750. Let's see who DLR is, just for fun. Okay. Are we on on a tangent? No, it's all related, isn't it?
No, this is good. This is excellent for me.
All related. About the continued circumstance?
Yes. Having the continued circumstance as we discussed.
Right.
Aren't we all?
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Oh, I need one of those computers the FBI has. It's fast. And it knows where you are.
It's really bad.
The DRS is Alice Bailey.
Yeah.
DLR is Charles Hill. He's the entomologist.
Wow.
He's the guy I was talking about who had all that second ray.
Yeah.
But something about, let's see, what Ellen is doing his horoscope now, and she figures Libra rising. He has the sun in Cancer and he's studying insects. And he's got Libra rising, and he's very loving, and he's had a second ray personality for quite a while, but now he's got a fifth ray personality. He's a first ray soul, and he definitely has a second ray monad. You can feel that. Yeah.
Is he implying that the study of insects actually gets you virtually nowhere?
Well, I'd say it's a kind of unusual study for your average disciple. There must be a reason for it. You know, he was the steadying influence in the Glamour group. Everybody else was running around on the sixth ray, and he had the sixth ray in his astral body, but he held the whole thing, you know, kind of firm just by his influence. He was a first-rate type, you know, first-rate type. I remember meeting Edgar Lansbury, who was Angela Lansbury's brother, and he was the president of the Agni Yoga Society, along with Daniel Enton. A very, very tall man, about 6'5", you know, and he looked like Abraham Lincoln, and he didn't ever say too much, but he just had this incredible first-rate presence, you know, no question about it. What was he doing as a movie producer? And he was a Broadway producer, basically. But you can see that his heart was in Agni Yoga. And he had this kind of, you know, like monolithic, the way he looked. Really, carrying the first ray by his presence. That's my point. By the presence you carry the stabilizing influence. Okay. For what is a disciple? Well, there's the question. Okay. He is one who seeks to learn a new rhythm. Okay. To enter a new field of experience. And to follow the steps of that advanced humanity who have trodden ahead of him the path, leading from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real. He has tasted the joys of life in the world of illusion and has learnt their powerlessness to satisfy and hold him. Satiation, right? Now he is in a state of transition between the new and the old states of being. He is vibrating between the condition of soul awareness and form awareness. He is seeing double. Normally when we talk about seeing double, it has a lot to do with alcohol, doesn't it? But he is intoxicated by the higher world and yet has to be present in the lower world. It's an excruciating experience, actually, to be a disciple. But at least you're not the wretched aspirant. You have your mind with you, whereas the aspirant usually has just a lot of desires for the spiritual life. Okay. His spiritual perception grows slowly and surely as the brain becomes capable of illumination from the soul. And remember, we I don't know, in this class we didn't read, but you've got to amp up your pineal gland before the third eye can open. In other words, it won't open unless there's enough pineal development. It seems to be kind of a virtuous circle. One feeds the other. So not all brains are capable of illumination. Not equally so. That's what he's saying. Via the mind. As the intuition develops, the radius of awareness grows and a new field of knowledge unfolds. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, let's go on with this. The first field of knowledge receiving illumination. Here, Shel, you read this.
The first field of knowledge receiving illumination might be described as comprising the totality of forms to be found in the three worlds of human endeavor: etheric, astral, and mental. The would-be disciple, through this process, becomes aware of his lower nature and begins to realize the extent of his imprisonment and, as Patanjali puts it, the modifications of the versatile psychic nature.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
The hindrances to achievement and the obstacles to progress are revealed to him, and his problem becomes specific.
Okay, so this, in the axillary process, this is alignment, crisis, light. The light is shed upon your problem, and you realize how bad it really is. As DK said to a lot of his failed students, you knew you were in trouble, but you didn't know how much trouble you were in. I'm paraphrasing somewhat, meaning your problem was a lot deeper than any of you ever suspected. Okay. Good.
Frequently, then, he reaches the position in which Arjuna found himself, confronted by enemies who are those of his household, confused as to his duty, and discouraged as he seeks to balance himself between the pairs of opposites.
In other words, the pull of the soul and the pull of the personality. Arjuna was that. Two sides of his family, and in the Mahabharata, that is all dramatized for us. Okay.
His prayer then should be the famous prayer of India, uttered by the heart, comprehended by the head, and supplemented by an ardent life of service to humanity. Unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. As he perseveres and struggles, surmounts his problems, and brings his desires and thoughts under control, the second field of knowledge is revealed. Just like a bell, it's not
the first field of knowledge was the microcosm, and it was his lunar nature. And now let's see what is going to be revealed.
Second field of knowledge is revealed, knowledge of the self in the spiritual body, knowledge of the ego as it expresses itself through the medium of the causal body, the karana sarira,
its causal body, yeah.
And awareness of that source of spiritual energy, which is the motivating impulse behind the lower manifestation.
Now by this he's going to mean the monad.
The disk of golden light is pierced, the true sun is seen, the path is found, and the aspirant struggles forward into ever clearer light.
So this is the central spiritual sun, and we're talking about, as it is called, the path of the just. And it leads into Shambhala. Okay, it's such good stuff. So practical. We need the real esoteric universities. We really, really need this.
I'd like to have some images of this, Robert and others. I'm thinking you can see piercing this disc of golden light, and see some things. It would just come to my mind anyway. You can visualize kind of.
We'll take a look.
That's what it's talking about.
Like what Robert has here. I know he's got some images to help us grab hold of.
They were just some of the things that caught my attention as I read through the first 8 rules.
So we'll just keep it handy, right?
If you go to the bottom left, the third icon over there,
Right. Oh, it's a beautiful picture of what's meant to be Solar Angel.
Is there one on the left that's got who's that, Gilbert?
that's Gilbert Williams. To the right, Alex Gray. Those are the 2 people I'd probably drop on the left.
That's gorgeous in this one right there.
Solar Angel and its instrument in the 3 worlds almost looks like the Pleiades there in the middle of the man's chest, but
this is a guy who used to attend our study group in Austin, Bruce Harman. He does some really nice work there.
Yeah, this obviously someone knows something here. Our magicians are advanced spiritual men. After many spiritual incarnations, they become responsive to the solar angel.
Just the idea of...
And look at the wave as it goes, the incarnational wave as it recedes into the
My abbreviated term for the shot is Krishnan roller coaster.
Krishna roller coaster.
It does look like it. The Bhakti Vedanta, all the Krishna books.
Yes, I suppose. Look at the guy in the middle. He seems pretty pleased with himself there. But they say that the masters are all around 35 years of age when they make a Maya Virupa. So.
Except for DK.
Well, he hasn't made a. Well, we don't know whether he's made a Maya Virupa yet. His other body was well over 100.
They were over 100?
Well, I don't know if it looked over 100, but it certainly was. Even when, let's just say he took the 5th initiation in 1875. He formed his ashram in 1925. This was drawn in 1930, early 1930s. He knew Blavatsky when he was a youth in the 1850s, 1860s, somewhere in there. Was he her age, more or less? If he was her age, he would have been about 100 in 1930. So he knew something.
Yeah.
Well, we won't go through them all right now.
Okay. Some of them relate to like Maya Virupa and things like that.
Yeah, I think we have to look through.
So this is your presentation. This is going to be for the conference.
No, some of the images. No, the conference presentation will be on rebirth. But,
oh, how beautiful!
The fireworks.
This was probably the most salient of all the passages. If you back up a couple, Michael, one more. He says that what we're dealing with in terms of these meditations is the ones that produce magical results in the physical plane, not with those whose purpose is the revelation of the inner God or bringing the illuminating part of the ego. And kind of felt like he was walking me down a hall and he goes, well, there's this one and this one, but we're really concerned with this one. I'm going, wait, go back. I want to see those. Exactly. So anytime he suggests 3 items or units or qualities or aspects, I always try to look at maybe a hierarchical ranking of them. So that's what the next one was sort of moving the one we're talking about down at the bottom. Because go ahead and I don't want to digress, but this was the way it sort of lined up for me. The revelation of the inner God being, that first ray aspect, and the ego, of course, the second. And then we're ready to actually work on the physical plane and bring it down to the personality level.
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it suggested to me anyway.
Yeah, he did say some of these earlier revelations are foundational. I think that's how he described it. Certain things have to be done in the life of the magician. There must be a degree of revelation of the ego before it's possible to become the magician. Okay, well, we'll come back to that, and as we move on. Okay, so who would like to read this section? Okay, as the knowledge.
As the knowledge of the self, and as the consciousness of that which the self sees. As the consciousness of that which the self sees, hears, knows, and contacts is stabilized, the master is found.
First the self, then the master. The soul is the first master. Okay. You go ahead.
His group of disciples is contacted. The plan for the immediate share of work he must assume is realized and gradually worked out on the physical plane. Thus the activity of the lower nature decreases, and the man, little by little, enters into conscious contact with his master and his group. But this follows upon the lighting of the lamp, the aligning of the lower and higher, and the downflow of illumination to the brain.
Lighting of the lamp is an interesting term, and you kind of remember what it used to be like to use a magnifying glass and a piece of paper. It takes a little while, doesn't it, before you just get everything and patience, and then it ignites. So through our alignment exercise, we are lighting the lamp, we are illumining gradually the ethers of the head, and especially in the region of the pineal gland, pituitary and pineal gland, and then the light in the head will eventually demonstrate, if the quality of your brain substance is such. Light in head will demonstrate. Okay, go ahead.
It is essential that these points should be grasped and studied by all aspirants so that they may take the needed steps and develop the desired awareness. Until this is done, the master, no matter how willing he may be, is powerless, and can take no steps to admit a man to his group and thus take him into his auric influence, making him an outpost of his consciousness.
Now, in a way, we should pause to say that all, that's accepting disciples, all accepted disciples are outposts of the Master's consciousness. And that's quite a responsibility, isn't it? Because they can tune in at any time, and as it were, see through your eyes. Not that they necessarily want to do that all the time, but you are connected at that point. Go ahead. Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
At some point, maybe not right now, but it would be really helpful if I finishes, just a brief review of accepted, just to kind of remind us of the progress. You did a wonderful summary a couple years ago in Finland, as I recall.
Maybe I did. It's been a long time, but the bottom line is there's a threefold progress at first: accepting disciple, pledged disciple, accepted disciple.
The difference is?
Yeah. Well, accepting disciple, you are convinced as to the value of certain aspects of the teaching which you, on hypothesis, accept as probably truthful. And then you begin acting on that which you accept. And as you act on that which you accept, you come to the point at which you will make a promise, affirm that way of life, and hold to a certain mode of action based upon your acceptances. And when you persevere in that mode of action to the point where you appear trustworthy and have ignited certain aspects of your nature which come because you are enacting that which you accept, then the Master can take you to the periphery of his aura and make a special line of communication with you that makes you an accepted disciple, meaning you are now an outpost of his consciousness, you are an outer member of his ashram, and you are now, your status is changed with respect to the Master. You are actually connected directly to him. So that kind of idea, but we could. Now, I say at the very least, we're all accepting disciples. We're studying this stuff. There's something in it for us, right? But let us make sure that we make the kind of promise to hold to the most important principles that we are accepting and demonstrate our adherence in practice. And then I think we stand a good chance, if we prove ourselves, of becoming the accepted disciple. And following that would come the chela on the thread and the aura and finally the chela in the Master's heart. But all of that's around the third degree probably and beyond. So at least the accepting the pledged disciple at some point between the first and second degree. Of course, you sustain it. Even after the second degree, you're pledged. After the third degree, you're pledged. You're pledged. He even uses the word the pledged initiate. Okay? So you've made a promise, you're going to keep it. But at least let us be that. Let us be irrevocably pledged to the service of humanity on behalf of the hierarchy. Let us be irrevocably pledged. And I can easily see that some of the people coming into the school are not yet pledged disciples. No. They are interested aspirants who may be willing to submit themselves to a probationary period on the basis of being a gradually accepting disciple. But let's just say that making that pledge, you can always tell the difference with somebody who says, no matter what. No matter what. You have to be willing, no matter what, to persist with your meditation, to persist with your studies, to follow through until the Master is forced to notice that you are upholding your promise. Then you will be drawn to the periphery of the ashram.
So in a sense, we force the hand.
We do. The master, under the law, has no choice but to acknowledge that we have held to our acceptance. And it's so important these days. These are not business as usual days, obviously. Right? If we could only grab a hold of the importance of these days and, get from ourselves every bit of moisture out of that turnip. Ring the turnip, Yeah.
If the accepting disciple is more between the first and the second?
Well, the accepting disciple can even precede the first initiation. A probationary discipleship has a couple of different meanings, but it can, definitely the path of aspiration precedes the first initiation, but you continue to aspire. And that your probationary path precedes the first initiation. It begins, but you continue to be tested. See, it doesn't let up. The true path of discipleship, or a pledged discipleship, is more likely after the first degree, and the accepted disciple occurs initially between the first and second degree, usually as the second degree is in sight. Okay? But the second degree, let's just say, he described that you can be an initiate without being accepted. This is interesting, because it has something that your acceptance has something to do with your personal relationship to the master. So you can be of high attainment and still not be drawn into a particular ashram, although eventually you will be. So ancient karmic relations often determine accepted discipleship if the other qualifications are also there. Master DK is full of "I knew you when" stories. When you're reading Dhyana 1 and 2, you just begin to realize these are his grandparents, his cousins, his relatives, whatever they are, who finally saw the light. He's probably trying to tell them something back in the old days, and they ignored him. Actually, they say of Master DK that he lost his whole inheritance from his uncle for pursuing this path.
The disinherited.
Yeah, well, that's right. Some people have said that it was that other guy, Master, connected with Master K.H. Damodar.
He uses that term.
Yeah, that's that term, but it's pretty clear also that Master DK is associated as the disinherited. He was willing, he had to make a choice, give up everything that wealth can offer him to pursue this task. And that's what you call being spit out by the world, Okay. All right. Every step of the way has to be carried out by the man himself, and there is no short or easy road out of darkness into light. There's the story that the Dalai Lama wept when he was being asked, what is the fast way? Saying there is no fast way. So...
The Dalai Lama, is
the Dalai Lama, yeah. All right, here, Mara, read a little more.
The white magician is ever one who, through conscious alignment with his ego, with his angel, is receptive to... Where does it go?
We read it before.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you tell me where I should begin?
Yes, that is my... I'm sorry, did you suddenly feel you had lost your place?
It ran away. It was really fast.
one of the test marks.
Okay. Remember, these are the fogs and miasmas and the high impulses, why we have to be advanced spiritual men, and the reflection is seldom responsive till many cycles have run. By the Sutra. Okay, now, this part we haven't read.
Okay. If he looks backward, he can see only the fogs and miasmas of the planes of illusion and fails to be interested. If he looks forward, he sees a distant light which attracts him, but he cannot as yet see which the light reveals. If he looks around, he sees but shifting forms in the cinematograph of form side of life. If he looks within, he sees the shadows cast by the light and becomes aware of much impedimenta which must be discarded before the light he sees in the distance can be approached, and then enter within him.
He's kind of stuck, right? Looking at every direction, but kind of stuck in the middle, not able to do too much yet. He's assessing the situation.
Then he can know himself as light itself, and walk in that light and transmit it likewise to others.
Now this, of course, is a classic second ray consummation. He can know himself as light itself, walk in that light, and transmit the light to others. You know, he's the builder of the ark, and build now an ark translucent which can reveal the light, O builder of the ark, and through that light you shall reveal the lighted way. This is the method, and I'm sure that many of us, you know, we recognize all this. We've gone through many stages when we've seen the impedimenta, we've seen the great light. We fail to be interested in what happened before. It doesn't attract us anymore. We cannot achieve the light ahead, but we're very interested in it. Around us, it's called the phantasmagoria of life, and DK tells us that even associated persons must be considered as phantasmagoria. So basically he says, detach yourself from all that stands around, for it is not for thee. Look to me, the soul. I am the one who draws the on and up. I am the one who builds, sustains, and draws the on and up. So this is that funny stage when a person is alienated from the past, feels inferior with respect to the future, feels discouraged with respect to that which is within, obviously the person just has to really begin to work, and this will come to an end. Okay? Go forward. Yes.
It is perhaps well to remember that the stage of discipleship is in many ways the most difficult part of the entire ladder of evolution. The solar angel is unceasingly in deep meditation. The impulses of energy emanating from him are increasing in vibratory rate and are becoming more and more powerful.
Okay, see what I mean? It's not just a little touch, it's just the drum beat is increasing and the potency of the stream is intensifying. Yeah.
The energy is affecting more and more the forms through which the soul is seeking expression and endeavoring to control. This brings...
Oops, sorry. It brings me somewhere.
This brings me to the consideration of the 7 points I made in my earlier analysis of Rule 1. I said the soul's meditation is rhythmic and cyclic in its nature, as is all else in the cosmos. The soul breathes, and its form lives thereby. The rhythmic nature of the soul's meditation must not be overlooked in the life of the aspirant. There is an ebb and flow in all nature, and in the tides of the ocean we have a wonderful picturing of an eternal law. As the aspirant adjusts himself to the tides of the soul life, he begins to realize that there is ever a flowing in, a vitalizing, and a stimulating, which is followed by a flowing out, as sure and as inevitable as the immutable laws of force.
Laws of force is rather interesting that we have to adjust ourselves to the tides of soul life. Hopefully the soul is living in the same time zone we are. So we can meditate when we're meditating in the morning or whenever. Although some people do discover, don't they, that I always like to meditate at this time. I get most out of it when I meditate now, right? I wonder if this is adjusting to the tides of soul life. Anyway, go ahead. This ebb and flow.
This ebb and flow can be seen functioning in the processes of death and incarnation. It can be seen also over the entire process of a man's lives. For some lives can be seen to be apparently static and uneventful, slow and inert from the angle of the soul's experience, whilst others are vibrant, full of experience and of growth.
Are you living an apparently static, uneventful, slow, and inert life at the present time? Or do you feel that yours is vibrant, and full of experience and of growth.
Yes. Somewhere
in between.
Well, maybe Lynn's not sure. Lynn had that look, you know. He just had that look. Well, I think the times are such today that everybody's being pushed along, you know, even the most unwilling of us. So, but anything, this whole thing is about the law of periodicity, isn't it? And it's about the law of periodicity within our energy system and in our relation to the polar opposite via Gemini. So we have to get a hang of the rhythm of how it works, and we also have to realize that after a while, this rhythm is going to increase. And after a while like that, the rhythm may increase so much that it just seems like steady presence. That would be total infusion, wouldn't it? Yeah, okay.
This should be remembered by all of you who are workers when you are seeking to help others to live rightly. Are they on the ebb, or are they being subjected to the flow of the soul energy? Are they passing through a period of temporary quiescence, preparatory to greater impulse and effort, so that the work to be done must be that strengthening and stabilizing in order to enable them to stand in spiritual being? Or are they being subject to a cyclic inflow of forces?
See, that happens oftentimes, what you would say, like an overstimulated condition. You know, we are all helping people in one way or another, and we do recognize that they are, something's really opening up now, or maybe they really need to just really ingrain that, you know, anchor it, make sure that it's reliable, something that is already flown in. You can't be subjected all the time to this stimulation. Your form just wouldn't take it, would it? Yeah. So we have to be very discerning concerning the people that we do help. And of course astrology is going to help us do that, isn't it? You know, like for instance, when your moon moves into Libra, by progression, it may be one of those interludes when you have to balance the forces of what you have experienced compared to the vision of what you see ahead. When the moon moves into Pisces, you're rarely going to start new initiatives. It's more about receiving the momentum of that which is past and somehow synthesizing it, meeting the karma of it, and so forth. The moon is a very good indicator. It's not really lunar at all. It's just
it would be helpful, Michael, if you get just a few words about each of the moons. Then we could really be helpful to
Sure. Well, you know, in a way it's very simple, because every time the moon shows up in one of the signs, it's not just the moon that it's not just your lunar vehicles that are being stimulated. The moon is like an aperture which opens the inflow of energy of all 12 types to every human being. If every human being lives to be 27 years old, they're going to get every energy of the 12 signs of the zodiac, because it takes 27 years to make the complete arc from moon to moon. So, you know, I always look at the progressed moon when I'm looking at a chart, because it is just what is flowing in at the moment, and I've got access to something new. The progressed chart is so important because it gives you new materials to work with. And, you know, and there are other things probably that we could determine whether you're in an outgoing period or a stabilizing period or receptive period. If you have let's just say you have a big transit of Neptune over your sun, or over the ascendant, or one of the angles of the chart, it's a time of receptivity, isn't it? Neptune is a receiving planet, a highly sensitive, impressionable, subtle planet. If you've got progressed to directed Mars going over one of the major angles, you're moving out. If Saturn is strong, stabilize what you've got. You know, just really, if you take on new burdens, make sure they're rhythmically performed and not just rapidly put together. You have to build a pattern and build a method of anchoring what you've got. Jupiter, however, will give you new horizons. And so you're not just going to stay at home. You're going to move out beyond the horizon with Jupiter. So I think we can help people understand the cycles that are going through. When Pluto is present, then just allow it to be destroyed and cut yourself from it. You're off into a new identity. Remember that Pluto is related to Aries. Aries, Pluto, Shambhala. That is, it doesn't rule Aries, but it's all about the rulership is of the old cycle, Pisces. You cut from that and you start something new, you're reborn in Aries. So it's a very difficult transits to handle because people don't necessarily like to cut from what they have established. Or if they don't like to cut, they can regenerate it, bring forth a new incarnation of it under Pluto. Yeah.
When we're working with Pluto, what kind of a horse would we allow since it goes so slow?
Well, I think that whole, when I watch it just go back 2 or 3 degrees on either side, I just say we're in that period, Yeah, maybe nobody likes Pluto too much. It's a first ray, but it leaves you with a lot less clutter and a lot more healing because you know how the soul tries to flow through your instrument and Pluto gets rid of the obstructions. And then that's health, isn't it? So we've got to welcome Pluto. As it takes away from you all that you hold dear. But you welcome it. He's saying to you all the time, this hurts me more than it hurts you.
You'll thank me someday.
Yeah, that's right. You'll thank me someday. Right. Well, we saw that wasn't the case in the Dead Poets Society, was it? Okay. So anyway, are we on the ebb, or are we being subjected to the flow of soul energy? Are we passing through a temporary stage of quiescence, temporary quiescence, preparatory to greater impulse? That's like Pisces before Aries, isn't it? So that the work must be done must be that of strengthening and stabilizing in order to help them stand in spiritual being? Or are they being subjected to cyclic inflow forces? What about standing in spiritual being? DK tells us it's a very occult phrase. Very Atmic, isn't it? First of all, it's standing. The second ray sits for enlightenment and the first ray stands, So, somehow we have made a direct alignment with our monad in the true standing in spiritual being. But as a second best, it's okay to be aligned with the soul. And especially with the sacrifice aspects of the soul, the will aspect of the soul. So, there are some people, as it says of the fourth ray, and its steadfastness, he says about St. Paul, having done all to stand. There's a lot of people who say, well, I can't do anymore. They say, okay, but at least stand.
Yeah.
That's the point. That in itself is doing something. So there are times when we know that we have to stand for our principles. A lot may be falling apart around us. We may wonder about how many people care about what we're doing, our audience or any of the rest of it. We just stand steady. And then we discover that we have a magnetism which will attract other people. Eventually we will go through that karmic period, and then our standing will have strengthened us and the magnet will be stronger, and those we can help will be drawn to us. Some of the great teachers only really had one prominent student. Tell me about, name all the disciples of Ramakrishna. That's who you can name. And the others, if you study the books, there were 10 around him or whatever, but you can name Vivekananda. So name all the disciples of Sri Yukteswar. Yogananda. Same thing, right? So oftentimes, you just have to pass the gift on to one major one who will really carry it forward, and a number of the other ones. Ramakrishna thought he was building up the evolutionary energy for the new age in his ashram, and maybe he was doing that. Others of his disciples were also effective, but nothing like Vivekananda.
But it may be about the carrier of the lineage.
The
carrier of the lineage,
yeah.
the carrier of the teacher. He's going to be the main spokesperson, the main transmitter.
Exactly.
Of what has come forward.
Exactly. Name the major disciple of Master Kuthumi. There you go. See, there it is. So there's always got to be one. You've got to look for your replacement.
Yes.
Look what happened when they replaced Julius Caesar with a triumvirate, didn't they? Didn't work out, did it? No. Yes. Well, what do we say about the seventh ray? Leadership of a group by a group. I've never been much in favor of it. But actually, DK says contradictory things about that. He says the new seventh ray group, will attempt that. That will be a special form. But Alice Bailey and he pretty well said that every occult group has its central point and then the interior secretary and the foreign secretary. It's that particular triangle that exists.
The interior secretary?
Yeah, secretary of the interior, foreign secretary. In other words, domestic secretary and international secretary. It fits, inner, outer, and a point. Yeah, okay. Standing as spiritual being. Okay, I'll take over the reading here a little bit. Or are they being subjected to cyclic inflow forces? In this case, the worker must seek to aid in the direction and utilization of the energy which, if misdirected, will eventuate in wrecked lives, but which, when wisely utilized, will produce a full and fruitful service. Well, I guess we're not playing with sissy stuff, This is playing with fire. So, if, the energy follows thought and the eye directs the energy. This is one of the hints, formulas, points of revelation. And if we don't handle, these energies properly, we can destroy the etheric webs, we can drive ourselves insane, we can be victimized, obsessed, possessed, alienated, set a bad example. We can do all kinds of stuff. Okay. All right. The above thoughts can also be applied by the student of humanity to the great racial cycles, and much of interest would be discovered. Okay. So we look at history the same way we would look at the individual aspirant. We look at the history of that aspirant called humanity and see what it has gone through. And it's gone through a lot of ups and downs and periods of wreckage, too. I mean, I don't think Atlantis was a great success, There were many things which were of value, but it didn't come probably to the end which was foreseen or which was necessary. Will the Aryan race come to an end which is foreseen or necessary? We are told that the attempt will be made to destroy the Aryan race by fire. Now, DK seems to talk as if that attempt has already been made. And that was in, the so-called Armageddon. When I talk to the Agni Yoga people about Armageddon, they say, well, all we have now is the tale of Armageddon. That was written in the Second World War. And DK talks about the attempt to destroy by fire as if the Second World War is a big part of that. I'm not convinced that attempt is over. I still think that implicit in the mix could be the attempt to destroy the Aryan race by fire. Only this time a very, very atomic fire could be devastating. And this is why the handling, as he told us about the sixth ray, he says it's far more destructive than the first ray type because it doesn't have the same breadth and the same wisdom. So,
think about the Nostradamus code and that small little book that's out.
I don't know enough about it I know the general idea.
Yeah, well, he says that there will be a conflagration of nuclear weapons in his own language.
Does he say that?
Yeah, and it will set off a certain country in the Middle East, something like that.
Well, there's a lot of messianic people, paradisical people waiting for the Christ or waiting for the next imam or whatever. They are pretty alienated from our ordinary life, and they seek something better in heaven. And they want to take everybody with them to heaven or hell. That's a dangerous situation.
On a news report I was watching last night, they in England they're really seeing an upswing in the Muslim radicalism.
Sure.
And, as you've seen the bombings and everything else, now they're becoming even more so. and out with signs that Islam will dominate the world.
Sure.
Yada yada. And they say that the United States is 15 to 20 years behind their movements in the rest of the world.
That's right.
And so when you see what's happened over there, and you think about, well, if that's the case, and you start catching up here in the United States, that there will be repercussions across the
There will be.
Set off a nuclear weapon here.
It would be the eradication. That would be eradication. Basically, Cain has to kill Abel. And it's like this. Vulcan has to step in and kill Mars. That's always the way it is. In other words, the spiritual will kills desire. Now, if we can discover Vulcan soon enough and become steadfast under the direction of the New Group of World Service to stand with will against this kind of recalcitrant, reactionary policy, we can use Vulcan to kill Mars so that Venus can come into power. That's the alignment of these three things. Right now, Venus looks weak, Mars looks strong, and Vulcan has not yet been pulled into its position of prominence. But the more of us who can get a grip on ourselves and help teach others to stand in spiritual will and say, no, we won't go with this. We refuse this. Then the Vulcan part of ourselves, pineal gland, head center, and all the rest, can dominate the solar plexus of humanity. Now, it's often been said that the Jews are the solar plexus of humanity, but that's not a full picture. There's only 13 million Jews in the world, and there are millions of Muslims. In this way, but the Muslim faith and part of the Christian faith too are the solar plexus and sacral center of humanity. If you add the Muslim group to it, it's extremely strong on the sacral center. So these lower chakras have to be dominated by the more enlightened people of the world, and they better get to work fast. Because, being so nice and having been through the Second World War, it's easy to just say everybody's rational. But everybody is not rational. So the fundamentalism in the world under the sixth ray, no matter which group it comes from, but most dangerously from the group that allies it to the sacral center, that's got to be controlled.
How did they get strong on that center? I mean, what caused that?
Well, that's just where they are in their consciousness.
Oh, you mean they're so level and low in consciousness? Well,
some of the greatest minds in the world have been in that faith. But remember, that's not everybody. And this is a Martian. Mars rules the sacral center. Mars rules the solar plexus. Mars rules Kundalini latent at the base of the spine. It's Mars. And Mars just came closer to our planet than it has been in 70,000 years. So that doesn't mean nothing. That means there's a huge Martian rebellion going on our planet right now. And it's got to be put down. I hate to say it that way, but you can't reason with this. This is not reasoning.
Not reasonable. Yeah.
No.
Here's a note. Yesterday, Obama rejected all the planning for Afghanistan. So it looks like he's stepping back and taking time to think this through, to plan.
Okay.
This means he's taking on the whole military staff. He's taking on the West Point guys. That's huge.
Okay, well, I wonder.
Huge.
I wonder what this will mean.
He said no to them.
He said no to McChrystal, did he?
He said no to them, to all of them. And they're like a band of brothers that, hang
The
together.
generals are now fighting each other because of it.
Okay, well, this is what was foreseen. This is the religious war that was foreseen, and this is the intervention of Shambhala, potentially in the Department of Religion, and this is the great danger. And this is the exit of the sixth ray. Millions and millions of souls exiting. So, how would this, because they're going to be out of incarnation in 100 years. How would this exit occur? It's a pretty scary thing, but you begin to feel the need for Vulcan. When you face this thing, you realize that only with firmness, according to principle, is this going to be stopped. It's not going to be stopped by a counter-Mars act. Mars itself is not enough. You can't just precipitate the whole thing into all-out war. It's got to be somehow standing on principle, standing on law. These are the firm things which can contain. and containment is needed. That's one of the things George Schultz did say, and I thought it was somehow very appropriate to the time.
There's still very much the minority that's creating this whole problem.
I understand that, and that's the same.
All the time, the TV time and everything.
Yeah, they do. But look at Germany.
Well, no, and I see. It's very, very dangerous because some people always get the grease.
Sure. Well, let's see. You mean he rejected? How do you mean he rejected?
They have been creating these plans, what to do in Afghanistan, increase here, do this, do that. And apparently the Pentagon, different points of view, presented many points of view to him. And he said, no, you can't.
And the reason why is because he's not sure that Karzai is willing to step up to the plate and commit to taking on the responsibility. And so you go into it with no end game,
Exactly, which would be just what we did before.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so at least
exactly.
he's smart enough to say, well, look, if you guys aren't going to step up to the plate and take care of your own country, then maybe we need to take another look at it.
Okay. Well, let's, we always have to keep our mind on this, and we have to hold the illumined outcome. We are members of the new group of world servers. We are the Ajna Center. We're supposed to be. And we are supposed to be those who have a link of Vulcan and Venus from the top of the head to the Ajna Center. We are not Mars. And yet we are not cowards either.
One of the services that we can do, as was pointed out by my hearing teacher Rose and to hold yourself in meditation and hold that presence in meditation. And one of her constant refrains was to vote for the aura of your choice. The bigger and the stronger and the cleaner the aura of your presidential candidate, right? The better receptivity they have to those in higher order who be meditating for the people. So, so she recommended that you learn how to see their auras.
Okay. Well, okay. We probably have a pretty good, the best we could produce right now. And we need to create thought forms in line with constructive outcomes.
And he's receptive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, anyway, humanity has been through its ups and downs. And no empire lasts forever, including our own. So we need a global civilization here and a new party, as he said, the party of humanity. And that's what the new group of world servers is supposed to be the nucleus of. Again, and of more vital importance to us, the cyclic impulses in the life of the disciple are greater frequency and speed and forcefulness than that of the average man. Okay. They alternate with distressing rapidity. Talk about your highs and your lows and your mood swings. Sometimes you feel up, sometimes you feel down. And these are the cyclic impulses. Let food be sought. Did you already put yours in, dear?
No.
And William, he's not on the list. Glenda, you're doing something. You got your own stuff. And Diane, you have your own stuff. So, this is like being made to a forced choice, a choice under pressure.
You want to get a break?
No. I've got it. Okay. Oh, this is the next day, right? It really is much more efficient than the old method.
Yes, that's right.
It's evolving.
Oh, wait a second. Where was this, what did you have, that veggie burger thing?
Number 12. Yep.
No. I'll experiment. Be brave, be bold. All right, anyway, distressing rapidity. Alternating these streams with distressing rapidity, and maybe some of us have experienced that, of feeling good in the morning, bad by noon, good again by night, I remember when I was trying to make a choice between medical school and opera. I know. But it's true. And I tell you, it was every 2 hours. I could feel the tides just pulling, total fourth-rate experience. Well, opera won. What can I say? All right.
And we're the better.
Yes, but one day I'll get those cures in. All right. Okay, the hill and valley experience of the mystic is but one way of expressing this ebb and flow. Sometimes the disciple is walking in the sunlight and other times in the dark. Sometimes he knows the joy of full communion. By the way, this is called the hill and valley experience of the Aquarian. The Aquarians, the manic depressive kind of thing? This is just a slight reflection of the hill and valley experience of the mystic. Okay. Sometimes he knows the joy of full communion, and again all seems dull and sterile, worthless, useless, why go on, quit, whatever. His service is on occasion a fruitful and satisfying experience, and he seems able really to aid, and at other times he feels he has naught to offer, and his service is arid. By the way, under the fifth ray, when you're having the integration technique, you experience the killing of the joy life, the drying up of the joy life, because everything is so objective and mental. So many people have to go. He says it's very difficult to handle in people. Sometimes you get fifth ray types going to psychiatrists, and they try to release all the things that have been suppressed. Okay.
Talking about a certain stage of consciousness. What initiation are we talking about here?
Okay, well, I would just say when people are starting to wake up, and usually a whole lot of the psychological work is done between the first and second initiation. There are some people who haven't even achieved that yet. Psychological work has to be done. But when the soul is behind the distress, then it's usually between the first and second initiation. Where does he say that? He says something about this is the longest and this is the hardest. He says something about the second degree and the first degree, Okay, all is clear to him on some days, on a clear day you can see forever, and he seems to stand on the mountaintop looking out over a sunlit landscape. I think I'll stop there. Would that be nice? All right, okay. Where all is clear to his vision. He knows and feels himself to be a son of God. Later, however, the clouds seem to descend, and he is sure of nothing and seems to know nothing.
No, I'm still...
Yes.
Thinking what he has said that the soul is often when there is distress in the person that is often between the first and the second initiation.
Distressing rapidity. That's what we're talking about.
But there is also a lot of people approaching the first that there is such an insatisfaction, and it's also a call from the soul.
Yes. In fact, matter of fact, he kind of seems to have been saying that as well. But I'm talking about this kind of oscillation, rapid oscillation. He says most of your psychological problems are solved by the time you get to the second degree. You're wrestling with glamour mostly before the second degree, and you've mastered it to a degree at the second degree when you have spiritual intelligence and mental illumination. Those are the... So after that, you begin to wrestle with illusion, and by the time we reach the third degree, a lot of illusions have been cleared away. But this long period between the first and second degree is very psychological. And of course, Vulcan and Pluto are active before the first degree. So if Pluto is active, it's going to be psychological. What did he say? How disheartened, how depressed, for maybe a long period of time, you feel before the first degree. So you really wake up and decide to do what is necessary with yourself. But even after you've committed yourself, you have the oscillation of the energies. He's trying to talk about the soul applying, the soul withdrawing, the ebbs and the tides. Yeah. And if you're really on the fourth ray, this can be extremely, you're just unstable, And that's why it's so interesting was it said steadfastness, the integrative word for the fourth ray. Finally get it together and stand. Okay. All right. And he wonders how long this uneven experience and violent alternation of opposites is going to go on. But once he grasps the fact that he is watching the effect of the cyclic impulses and effects of the soul's meditation upon his form nature, the meaning becomes clearer, and he realizes that it is the form aspect which is failing in its response and reacting to the energy with unevenness. And we have to become a steadily approaching point of light rather than just a flickering flame. They look towards us and they see our light. And if it's always going on and off, we are the victim of this experience. But if we're steadily burning, waxing, approaching, that's the Sagittarius experience. Sagittarius can be counted upon, this approach like a beam of light, until the target is reached. Yes. Okay. He then learns that once he can live in the soul's consciousness and attain that high altitude, if I might so express it, at will, The fluctuations of the form life will not touch him. And by the time you're on the second degree, it's pretty steady. It's a steady and rapid approach, and you're also being helped by the current of the stream. You have entered the stream. Read The Voice of the Silence. All about entering the stream and how you are borne on by that stream.
And what he says here, there's still fluctuations of form life. They just don't upset you.
Something's happening, and you're living above it. Yeah. It's your altitude that allows. And he says, not one thing, not one, kind of pain or distress that arises in the astral body is allowed to make the slightest difference. I have that. I suppose if I write down the word pain or distress, we'll see what we find. Pain. Unfortunately, there's a lot of pain. Oh, jeez. Okay, but I thought it's somehow very good, to remind ourselves what should be our attitude to these fluctuations. Oh, I'm just down and I'm happy about it. Pain. Oh, look at this. Well, it's not exactly what I wanted, but we are told, and it is factually true, that the longest period between initiations is to be found between the first and second initiations. This is a truth which must be faced, you weary aspirants, okay? But it should also be remembered that it is by no means the hardest period. The hardest period for the sensitive feeling aspirant is between the second and third initiations. Of course, many people, I suspect, feel they are there when they're actually in the long period. Okay. It is a period of intense suffering, of the penalty of applying factors of glamour and illusion, of pronounced involvement in situations which for a long time remain unclarified, and of a steady moving forward as best the beleaguered aspirant can. And by the way, he calls him beleaguered aspirant, still between the second and third degree, under the influence of right direction and spiritual determination. This he has usually to do in the dark, working under the action of the logical and understanding mind, but seldom under the influence of inspiration, Sagittarius. Nevertheless, the good work goes on. And he says, light, flickering, and as yet uncertain and unpredictable, pours occasionally in from the soul via the mind, adding frequently to the complications, but producing eventually the needed control, which will lead to and result in freedom. Okay. Raised initiations. Yes.
So you're saying that the before the third, you're still working with the left brain. You're still having to figure everything out, think everything through, and work slowly and methodically, as opposed to using the right brain, the divine feminine, the intuitive sense, which would just allow it to flow.
Well. It is true that intuitive instinct is the keynote of the third degree. Okay, so a lot of mental illumination, but about allow it to flow and all the rest of it, maybe it depends a lot on your ray type. Remember that Saturn and Mercury are the two planets of accepted discipleship. They are not allow it to flow planets. So you've got to really build in your structure of mentality and your foundation of purification before, at the third degree, entering the Buddhic plane, you can allow it to flow. So, too many people allow it to flow before they have any structure to support what's flowing. So the result is they get washed away, So I do think that if we err on the side of rigor, we will be doing the right thing at our particular stage of development. And then, of course, remember, the intuition is meant to be approached from the disciplined mind, and not from the kind of wide open sensing astral body. It comes in there too. It does. There's an astral Buddhic connection. But unless that mind is steady, disciplined, held steady in the light, purified and so forth, the real intuition is not going to be accessed at will. We want to access intuition at will. And that means Saturn, Mercury have done their job, So I'm the wrong kind of guy to talk about let it flow. There are other let it flowers around, Flower power. Okay, but I want to look up pain and distress. Yeah, I have some pain and distress. function in the dual light, the bitter piling up of pain and distress. What am I looking for, by the way?
Pain and distress.
But why was it? Yeah.
The flickering light.
Something about initiation.
I was like between the second and the third, the sensitive ones, you have more pain, and then you.
Well, okay. I think maybe I found it.
Yeah, I think you.
Okay.
The long and the short of it.
The long and the short is you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
You know. I know. All this thing, what is it?
It's not the long and the short, it's the long and the hard of it.
The long and the hard of it. That's it. That's what it is. What do they say about something is inevitable and suffering is optional? Is that it? Pain is inevitable and suffering is optional, right? It's nicely said, but I just don't believe it. Well, okay, I know. I think it has a lot, it has a lot to do with the planet we're on and why we're called a planet of purifying pain and releasing sorrow and purifying pain. And in the New Age, there will be no pain and all that. But, there will be a lot of joy in the New Age, we're told. We have to learn how to handle joy.
Yeah.
But, this is a planet that is sort of the inheritor, inheritor of the unredeemed conditions of the previous solar system and of the moon chain failure. Now, that's not a happy situation. And, even Master Moria says, don't jump up and down for joy. The atmospheric condition doesn't warrant it. And he tells you that you have to be, why are people not happy, he says. And he talks about the deep oppression of all of these things by which we are surrounded. So the joy is the joy of the soul, and that's wonderful. But let's remember that the fourth path of Sanat Kumara, which makes things go very fast, is the path of pain. He says about evolution of the fourth-rate type, very rapid, or becomes a ne'er-do-well. Very rapid practice or a ne'er-do-well. Never do anything well. Ne'er-do-well. Okay.
Fourth-rate type, did you say?
Fourth-rate types. Yeah, fourth-rate types. Rapid practice or a ne'er-do-well. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's as if, the constant friction and the battles of the personality can either propel you on to the birth of Horus, the sun god, or disintegrate you. There's more madness in the fourth-rate type than in any other type, So this is the type for whom insanity is the preferred path. Genius and insanity, the artist, and wildness and all that kind of thing. All right. So anyway, pain and suffering, yeah. And now we move on to joy, right? Okay. Where were we? Okay, he learns that if he can live at this high altitude, that's great. And the form life becomes for him simply a field for service and not of sensuous perception. He's going to ask you to ponder on that. Let the student ponder upon this last sentence and let him aim to live as a soul. In other words, a lot of people want what's in the life of the form. They're so attached to it. They want to experience more. Give me more. I want this. He says the true aspirant isn't that. The true aspirant is not caring so much about the experience, but is here to give back. Then cyclic impulses emanating from the soul are known to be impulses for which he himself, and here's a clue, for which he himself is responsible, and which he has sent forth. Look, he's telling you you're the ego. You see that? The cyclic impulses from the soul are your own. You have sent them forth because you are the ego. He knows himself to be the initiating cause because he's soul identified and not the subject to effects. Let's see how much more of this we want to. I think we're going to finish this particular rule before lunch, and then we'll look at the one afterward. Okay. We get two factors, the breath and the form upon which the breath energizes and drives into activity, and the form which the breath energizes or drives into activity. Upon careful study, it becomes apparent that we have, for eons of time, identified ourselves with form. Do you believe it? You are what you see in the mirror? Okay. We have emphasized the effects of the imparted activity, but we have not understood the nature of the breath nor known the nature of the one who breathes. Do you feel like you are the one who have breathed you into existence? In other words, the usual you. You ever get that sense that you have caused this whole appearance? That's what he's telling us, that we are the cause, the breathing cause, behind the manifested appearance. Now in our work we are concerning ourselves with that one who, breathing rhythmically, will drive the form into right action and right control. Now remember, we're also told the man breathes deeply, he concentrates his forces and drives the thought form from him. The soul drove its form forth into the lower worlds, and we drive our little created point of light, when it gets all fleshed out on its mission. They have to learn how to breathe, and DK even tells us actually taking a deep breath and doing this is part of the activity. It's not just psychic breathing, it's actually an exhaling release that drives it. And that's an interesting hint. When we want something to happen, after we've cooked on it for a long time, the power of exhalation and visualization simultaneously will help, right? Okay. This is our objective and our goal. A right understanding is necessary, nevertheless, if we are to appreciate intelligently our task and its effects. Okay. Much more can be said about this rule. I'm going to read fast so we get through it. Much can be said about this rule, but enough has been given to give the average applicant to discipleship to consider and upon which to base action. Most of us are average, are we not? Okay, a vote? A vote? Most of us are average, are we not? This is one of his attempts at humility induction. Okay. I mean, actually, DK has quite a sense of proportion. You know, he sees a much greater world than we do, and when he looks at, you know, we're here in the middle of humanity, and we're seeing the high human beings and the low, and he looks at all of us from a distance, and we all look pretty close together from that point of view. If we regard ourselves as otherwise, we divorce ourselves from others and become guilty of the sin of separateness, the one real sin. I have a lot of friends I would like to send this quote to. Okay. But by doing so, I would prove myself in contradiction to the point. So therefore, I won't send it. I'll just wish I could.
Maybe by mistake.
Oh, think about mistake. Oh, that's good.
You can send it secretly. Like I wouldn't know it was from.
Oh, people will suspect. Yeah.
Hold on. If you send that, you would be then ostracizing them or causing them?
I would be standing in the seat of the superior person by saying, you're not average, are you?
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
You're a superior.
See what I mean? Proud of my humility. Yep, okay. All right. An appreciation of the above thought should build in the aspirant a realization of the value of his meditation work. Value of his meditation work. Well, we've been at it a long time, haven't we? We better get that message. Whilst the idea of cyclic response to soul impulse lies back to the activities of a morning meditation, a noonday recollection, which we have now passed, and an evening review. Okay. A larger ebb and flow is also indicated in the two aspects of the full moon and new moon, okay, as Lynn said earlier. Let's see. And then DK exhorts us. May there be full and steady play of cyclic force from the kingdom of spirit upon each one of us, calling us forth into the realm of light, love, and service, and producing a cyclic response from each one. May there be a constant interchange between those who teach and the disciple who seeks instruction. He's talking Gemini now, he's talking Mercury, he's talking breathing. You know, the response, I breathe it forth, and then I respond, and I breathe back. May there be these things. DK is very good at exhortation. Sometimes I feel he was a poet of some kind, a pretty good one too. He writes beautifully, you know, not just technically, but sometimes beautifully as well. Yeah. All right. Okay. Much preliminary work will have to be done. The disciple on the physical plane and the inner teacher, whether one of the great ones or the master within the heart, in a way a much higher teacher, needs to know each other somewhat and to accustom themselves to each other's vibration. Okay, so we have to have a period of accommodation, of customization. We have to become familiar. Teachers on the inner planes have much to contend with owing to the slowness of the mental processes of students in physical bodies. That's us. The confidence and trust will set up the right vibration, which will produce eventually accurate work. So if you don't believe in the soul, if you just think it's all a bunch of nonsense and you're just going through the motions, then it won't be set up properly. No, it won't. Lack of faith, of calmness, of application, and the presence of emotional unrest will hinder. Well, okay. So when we see people who apparently cannot contact their soul or feel bored by the whole process, we can look at the impediments here. Lack of faith, of calmness, of application, not practicing what you know, right, and the presence of emotional unrest. Long patience those on the inner side need in dealing with all who must, for lack of other and better material, be utilized. Well, that's a rather humbling thought. For lack of better material, they must be utilized. Cobbled together. That's all, but I may not be much, but I'm all I've got. We can call this Silk Purse Productions. Okay. Or maybe it should be called Sauzier Productions. Okay. Some physical, here's all the ways we can stop it. Some physical injudiciousness, I ate too much, I'm sorry, may make the physical body non-receptive. Massamoria says, a scent stops on a burdened stomach. This is his way of getting the point across. And Master DK, being a little more analytic, says, we each eat 4 times too much. Yeah. What's for lunch? All right. Some physical injudiciousness may make the physical body non-receptive. Some worry or care may cause the astral body to vibrate to a rhythm impossible for the right reception of the inner purpose. Some prejudice, some criticism, some pride may be present that will make the mental vehicle of no use. Wow. That's interesting.
Here we are still in Scorpio with the Hydra.
Yeah, we're dealing with them right here. Just think. A proud, critical, prejudiced person has a mental body of no use to the hierarchy. Wow. Now, DK says, aspirants to this difficult work must watch themselves with infinite care. Infinite care. And keep the inner serenity and peace and the mental pliability which will tend to make them of some use in guarding and the guiding of humanity.
Michael, this is exactly something about what should be put in big letters for so-called
intelligent.
Yes, intelligentsia. What is the
intelligentsia? Yeah. The so-called intelligentsia. Yes.
Yeah, and academic ones, because they. When we look those requirements of the initiations, we so often forget this part. There has to be some kind of loving quality in the mind, which goes beyond of that advancement, what we would be looking in human sense. Something like more simple person or something can be more useful.
Yeah, it's the Venus mind, the appreciative mind, as you've often called it, Sheldon and Helena. It's somebody presents who they are, and maybe instead of focusing on everything that's wrong with them, you somehow evoke what's good. Of course, we'll leave it to the master to focus on that niggly little thing that has to be fixed. It usually works better for him to do that because, as I said before, every time he complimented one of his students, they went off the rails. But usually when it's tough. But then he's in a position to know. And when we offer our criticism, well, as far as I see it, you need to, fix this. Who are we to do that? He is someone who can, because he loves enough, he can offer criticism with love. He says, you can speak the truth, you love enough. So, we don't, not yet.
And he talks in the initiation, Human and Solar, in the beginning, that the crucial moment of this time and the experiment what hierarchy is trying to experiment, and that masters are seeking those who are ready to respond to energy of hierarchy, which is of love. So there is something about mind too, which is, as I said, it can be simple minded person, but is somehow responding exactly to that energy and quality what they try to implement into humanity.
Well, he tells you, that simplicity governs the way into Shambhala. And, he says for all the second-rate types who are on their way to Shambhala, a cultivated simplicity is the way to go. He tried to get one of his, I think, first-rate monad types, which is the second-rate soul, to do that. But the guy didn't do it, It's so interesting that with the teacher being so present and so believable, that so many people would choose their own way rather than to be rightly guided. And we always say, well, we wouldn't succumb to that kind of thing, but I just really wonder, So, okay, look, just winding things up here and just hitting the essence. We have to arrive at absolute purity of motive. We have to enter the silence of the high places. Read this yourself if you want it. It's really good. We have to remember that any lack of calm in daily life will prevent the teacher's unegoic levels from reaching us. So when we are, we get disturbed, and for obvious reasons. This morning I thought I had lost my green tea.
Yes.
Yes, and I just, before I know it, the whole bedroom was just filled with the contents of my suitcase, demonstrating calmness forever unperturbed.
And those who know Michael, just guess how many times of per day he has lost something. What it means, how the surrounding is looking like.
I'm looking forward to 7th ray on the physical. I'll never lose anything again, Okay.
I think it always helps.
Yes, I'm acting as if. Well, anyway, the idea of quiescence is coming here. Work, toil, strive, aspire, and hold the inner calm. Wow, what a mantra. Work, toil, strive, aspire, and hold the inner calm. That's the Christ has mastered it, and the Buddha too. You didn't see him getting too upset.
That's when we lost the first week. When with that.
What did you say? This
Work, toil, strive. It wasn't this one. It was that one where, no rest.
And rejoicingly serve. What Okay. Oh yeah, no rest. Yeah,
no
rest is out of the question for people at this time. I think there's a lot to attract people. When we want them to join our groups, tell them what to do.
But it's the combination on the one hand of no rest, but doing it with inner calm. Because so often we get into the no rest and then
we get agitated.
And then we are not
Well, and look, Master DK says you better take care of the vehicle. You got to,
Look, setting into a trigger
cultivate a responsive high plan, and change your labor. Rest is a change of labor. That's what he says.
Was it not that we were reading how the solar angel in this point is ceaselessly meditating, or what was that?
Yeah, it's in constant meditation with cyclic impulsions.
So I think there is much about how the heart is working, because heart is not resting.
Right.
Heart is beating. So there's something about that, how we become more of heart.
Well, let's just say the heart learns how to rest fast. You know what I mean? It has those slight interludes, And sometimes when it doesn't get the rest it needs, it skips a beat. That's what that's involved with. It's called a granny stop, and then you just pump on.
Yeah, but anyway, if one thinks about it, it's like ceaseless.
Yeah, it is ceaseless, but it's somehow...
You could say that the interlude of the non-heartbeat is the rest.
Yeah, there's a tiny little rest. There's a tiny little rest, Okay, it is an inner poise that holds to the vision. This is what we expected of us, right? An inner poise that holds to the vision, yet does its outer work on the physical plane with a concentrated physical brain attention, which is in no way deviated by the inner receptiveness it involves the dual activity. So this is the dual life described. Very effective, and yet always seeing the vision while being effective, okay? And then he tells us learn to control thought, and we're very familiar with that idea. All those 15 counsels, so many of them about a control of thought, and this is interesting too. Aspirants must learn to inhibit certain thoughts and to prevent certain knowledge from leaking out into the public consciousness when in contact with their fellow men. So this is part of the training to withhold the mysteries of initiation, the secrets of initiation. And we have to be, that's perhaps why the masters don't want the plan to come out to humanity too soon, because of that inevitable leak how they would pick it up, right? Okay. Now, let's go back to one of the terms. It's of vital interest to appreciate the significance of the word scatters not his force. The solar angel collects himself, scatters not his force, but in meditation deep communicates with his reflection. There are so many lines of activity into which the soul-inspired disciple may throw himself. Now, if any of you are having trouble figuring out what you're going to do with your life, look at what's said here. This is really important. No, I'm going fast here because...
You don't have to steal the lost with the words.
I'm just focused. Okay. There are so many lines of activity. Assurance as to the varying lines of activity is not easy to reach. And every aspirant knows perplexity. Is there anybody here who is in even slight perplexity concerning their future? The specifics of their future. Yeah, okay. Every one of us may not know exactly what we're going to do in the next 1 month, 2 months, 2 years, 5 years, right? Okay. Right. Let us put the problem in the form of a question, regulating it or relegating it to the plane of everyday endeavor, as we are not yet in a position to comprehend in what way the soul can scatter its forces on the heart. That's a hint. The soul can be interested in a lot of different things, the divisibility of consciousness, right? But as an act of sacrifice and a Saturnian act of concentration, it pulls things in to help below. Okay. What is the criterion whereby a man knows which out of several lines of activity is the right line to take? This is a big question for many of us, is it not? I think, even though I know what the road is, there are many different possibilities on that road. Is there, in other words, a revealing something which will enable a man unerringly to choose right action and to go the right way? This question has no reference to a choice existing between the path of spiritual endeavor and the way of a man of the world. We've made that choice. It refers to right action when faced with a choice. This is one of the most practical sections in all of white magic right here. A lot of people can benefit from this. There's no question but that the man is faced in his progress with increasingly subtle distinctions. The crude discrimination between right and wrong, which occupies the child's soul, is succeeded by the finer distinctions of right, or of more right, of high or of higher, and the moral or spiritual values have to be faced with the most meticulous spiritual perception. In the stress and toil of life, and in the constant pressure on each one from those who constitute their group, the complexity of the problem is very great. Hey, that's interesting, isn't it? In the constant pressure on each one from those who constitute their group. Do you think we are submitting each other to pressure?
Yes.
Yes? Good. That's right. Really, we are. The group gaze and all the rest of it. No matter what position we're in, we are submitting ourselves to mutual pressure. In solving such problems, certain broad discriminations can proceed, the more subtle, and when the decisions have been made, the more subtle can then take place. The choice between selfish and unselfish action is the most obvious one to follow upon the choice between right and wrong, and is easily settled by the honest soul, Do I want what will be pleasant for me, comfortable for me, rather nice for the integration and kind of well-being of the personality, or do I choose something that is more selfless? Now this is a basic discrimination. And then right and wrong, well, that even seems in a way cruder somehow. A choice which involves discrimination between individual benefit and group responsibility rapidly eliminates other factors. So he's giving us kind of a grid here, isn't he? We subject our decisions to this grid and then get down to the nitty-gritty. And it's easy for the man who shoulders his just responsibility. Note the words just responsibility. What ray is it that has the glamour of over-responsibility? Second ray. Yep. It's the glamour of taking on the responsibility that really belongs to someone else because you're helping them. Okay. We are considering the normal sane man and not the over-conscientious morbid fanatic. All right, well, I'll read on for your sake. All right. There follows next the distinction between the expedient, involving factors of physical plane relations of business and of finance, leading up to a consideration of the highest good for all parties concerned. So, it might be easy to do something, but it might not be the highest good. But having through this triple eliminated process arrived at a certain position, cases arise where choice still remains in which neither common sense nor logical discerning reason can help. Neither common sense, nor logical discerning reason can help. What do you do then? What do you do? The desire is only to do the right thing. The intent is to act in the highest possible way and to take that line of action which will produce the best good of the group apart from personal considerations altogether. We have good intentions, and yet we don't know what to do. And then he gives us a solution. Light upon the path which must be trodden is not seen. The door which should be entered is unrecognized, and the man remains in a state of constant indecision. What then must be done? One of two things. Would you like to eat lunch before you find out? No, you want to find out. I know you do. First, the aspirant can follow his inclination and choose that line of action out of the residue of possible lines which seem to him the wisest and the best. This involves belief in the working out of the law of karma and also a demonstration of that firm decisiveness which is the best way in which the personality can learn to abide by the decisions of the soul. Once you make this choice, you stick to it. It involves also the ability to go forward upon the grounds of the decision made and so abide by the results without forebodings or regrets. You just hold firm, steadfast, and move forward based upon having made a decision according to your best understanding, even though you've gone through the three-level grid of eliminations. Actually, persons, when faced with major decisions, could really follow this grid. They could do it consciously among themselves, with themselves in meditation. Is it selfish or unselfish? Is it, what was the second one? Is it right or wrong? Is it expedient or better or benefit for the group? And there was other things involved in there as well. I forget. Now, here comes the occult method. Are you ready? All right. Secondly, he can wait, resting back upon an inner sense of direction, knowing that in due time he will ascertain, through the closing of all doors but one, which way is the way to go. The closing of all doors but one. For there is only one open door through which such a man can go. Intuition is needed for its recognition. In the first case, mistakes can be made, and the man thereby learns and is enriched. In the second case, mistakes are impossible, and right action can be taken. So maybe some of you who are facing important decisions in the immediate future can use this to determine where you will make the best impact of your energies. It is obvious, therefore, that all resolves itself into an understanding of one's place upon the ladder of evolution. Only the highly advanced man can know the times and seasons and can adequately discern the subtle distinction between a psychic inclination and an intuition. And let's just add to this that times and seasons, that's the old English spelling, involve astrology as an aid to intuition. All right. Astrology. All right. Now, let's see if there's anything else. We should be at the end almost. In considering these two ways of ultimate decision, let not the man who should use his common sense and take a line of action based upon the use of the concrete mind practice the higher method of waiting for the door to open. That requires a lot of restraint, a lot of will. He is expecting too much in the place where he is. He has to learn through right decision and right use of the mind to solve his problems. Through this method he will grow, for the roots of intuitive knowledge are laid deep within the soul, and the soul therefore must be contacted before the intuition can work. That's so important, because a lot of people who are still just asked to be polarized expect their intuition to work, and they haven't gone through the effort of occult meditation to contact the soul. One hint only can here be given. The intuition ever concerns itself with group activity and not with petty personal affairs. And if we ask DK what is petty, he probably has a much more comprehensive view of petty than we do. Probably some of our cherished things may look to him petty. If you are still a man centered in the personality, recognize it, and with the equipment available, govern your actions. If you know yourself to be functioning as a soul, and are lost in the interest of others, untrammeled by selfish desire, that's it. That's how you function as a soul. Then your just obligation will be met, your responsibility shouldered, your group work carried forward, and the way will unfold before you. The way will unfold before you. Whilst you do the next thing and fulfill, this is for cancers, the next duty. The next duty. Okay. Out of duty, perfectly performed, will emerge those larger duties which we call world work. Out of the carrying of family responsibilities will come the strengthening of our shoulders, which will enable us to carry those of the larger group. What is the criteria? Okay, well, Alice Bailey learned that, didn't she? 3 kids, an abusive husband, no finance, etc. And, she had to carry big, heavy loads after that, but she learned something, didn't she? What then is the criterion? For the high-grade aspirant, let me repeat, the choice of action depends upon a sound use of the lower mind. Are we high-grade aspirants? Or what are we?
Hopefully at least.
The fly just arrived. Go. The employment of a sane common sense and the forgetfulness of selfish comfort and personal ambition. This is how the high-grade aspirant makes his decision. Sound use of the lower mind, the employment of a sane common sense and forgetfulness, this is tough, forgetfulness of selfish comfort and personal ambition. This leads to the fulfillment of duty. For the disciple, and he does discriminate here, doesn't he, between the disciple and the aspirant. For the disciple, there will be the automatic and necessary carrying forward of all of the above, plus the intuition which will reveal the moment when wider group responsibilities can be justly shouldered and carried simultaneously with those of the smaller group. That's very important. So we fulfill every one of our duties, and the intuition will reveal when we don't relinquish the lesser, but can carry the greater. A lot of people want to run off and save the world and leave their family as a result. You know how it goes. You leave your immediate duties, and you're off to some greater thing that fulfills your ambition. Apparently that's not how it's done. Ponder on this. The intuition reveals not the way ambition can be fed, nor the manner in which desire for selfish advancement can be gratified. The solar angel collects himself, scatters not his force, but in meditation deep communicates with his reflection. So what have we learned about Rule 1? What are the main things standing out here in Rule 1?
Before we do that, which is this from that we were just going?
That was White Magic, and now we've completed all of the writings on either Cosmic Fire or Rule 1. Rule 1.
Rule 1 and White Magic?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, Rule 1 and Cosmic Fire and White Magic are the same.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
But this is
That was White Magic, and he brought in some stuff from Cosmic Fire, but he also enlarged on things. The solar angel collects himself. The meditator collects himself. Scatters not his force, nor do we scatter our force. But in meditation deep, we communicate not only with our reflection, we communicate with our superior. He communicates, or it communicates with us. And we are engaged in a rhythmic interplay with our superior meditating entity. Are we involved in this process? Do we take it seriously? Are we rhythmic about it? I'm asking myself as I go along. Obviously, rhythm really works. It gives you momentum. Rhythm reduces friction. Have you noticed that when you get in a rhythm, the momentum is enhanced by the reduction of friction. But if we're living chaotic lives, which, we all do at certain times, you say, I just can't get myself going, something's always interrupting me, I can't build up a momentum, I can't build up a rhythm, we need that right rhythm. What will produce right rhythm?
Will.
Yeah, and basically, willingness to operate rhythmically even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
You can feel like all kinds of things or not, And that has nothing to do. In the arcane school, there was no question. When the bell rang at noon, into the meditation room. And thus it was in the morning, and thus it was at 5 o'clock. Drop whatever you're doing, go. So, and whether you felt like it or not. So the outer discipline can help that, I think. And after a while, you internalize the outer discipline, don't you? So you almost, something in you habituates itself to that discipline, and then seems to say, hey, I'm available. So probably those moments will come when you can be augmented. So you feel like a white magic is within your grasp, having read Rule of One. The Solar Angel collects himself. Well, that might be the first task. Scatters not his force. That's what he's saying. What is right livelihood? Where are we supposed to be throwing our energies? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it selfish? Is it unselfish? Is it expedient? Is it helpful for the group? And several other things in there. Are we putting our energies where they belong? Are we wasting time and energy in any way? I'm sure if we made an accounting of our lives, we would see many energy investments which are not necessary, however pleasant they may be. Or am I mistaken about this? Is anybody living the thoroughly, spiritually efficient life?
Very good thought.
Well, yes. Now there's a thought, isn't it? The spiritually efficient life. I'm just trying to think. Almost every time I go somewhere on the internet where I need not go, that's a waste of energy and time.
I feel that all the time, actually.
Yeah. Well, I need not go here. I'm just trying to think, If I overeat, I'm wasting time and energy. If I go into idle mind, I'm wasting time and energy. And I suppose if I stay up too late, it's the same thing,
So we're reasoning now from what the solar angel is supposed to be doing as to how we,
exactly. Because we're not in a position to know.
Souls in incarnation should be behaving.
Yeah, because he's a master of all degrees.
So we follow that example.
We the reflection, follow the example of the solar angel. If we really wanted to be accountable, and we wanted to make a strict accounting of what we do, boy, get out old Saturn. Life would really change. Think of it.
Yeah.
The hand reaches to do something. Is it right? Is it just? Is that honeypot necessary? What about the salt? Whatever,
It's part of the right rhythm, he's talking about Saturn now. So.
I'm just talking about how necessary Saturn really is. Of course, I like golf as much as the next guy. I do. No. I just looked at you and I got your thought, and I just couldn't help it, I got to get out my gloves too, It is a rhythm. It is. And you're out on the green, you're healing yourself, and you're getting exercise.
You should be talking about this stuff on the phone.
That's it. You join their threesome, and you really make them regret it.
You love it with that.
I spent a lot of time in my life on the golf course. I was the kind of guy that it could have been like 40 degrees and raining and 5 in the morning, and I would be throwing stones at my friend's window and say, "Come on, we got 36 holes to play." Yeah, that was life. That was it. Golf was an obsession for me. Absolutely. I loved it.
And you gave it up.
The court for
What happened here? What happened to you? You changed obsessions.
That's it. Now you got it. That's it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Music took over from golf. That's it. It was the physical stage, and then the acting and drama. And
You went through the physical stage of golf, then you went through the musical stage.
yes. And then I began to think.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm sure we all go through the Lemurian, Atlantean, and Aryan stage. And sometimes they overlap, But I was really into athletics, of the lighter kind. Golf, tennis, bowling, swimming, that kind of thing. Now I can't even walk. But I can jump, let me tell you. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, so, what do we get out of Rule 1? Rule 1? Boy, there's so many good pieces of advice in Rule 1, aren't there? Just marvelous pieces of advice. And, it's just egoic communication, cyclic meditation, coordination, at-one-ment, rhythmic availability, like he says, the white magician is one in touch with the soul. He's receptive to the plan and purpose. He's got to be impressible. He's got to look above, use his soul energy, not respond to the vibrations of the form side of life. Stay in a state of concentrated recollectedness. Look at the throat center. Look where we can scatter our force with the throat center. Think about, this third ray center and the third ray scattering of forces. Idle talk, talk about anything, and instead of speaking purposefully with something useful in mind. I mean, if we really were, in the monastery but not in the monastery, as it were. In other words, if we were living in such a way that we really wanted to make it count, no matter what kind of conditions we're in, maybe a very different way of living could occur. And I suppose if we ask ourselves the question, what could I give up to make myself more effective? Probably each one of us would have something against which there might be a little resistance, perhaps. But, trying to think, that sounds like a good exercise for the afternoon.
Well, to put you to sleep.
What could I give up? Sleep? I could give up sleep. To render myself more effective. Food?
Probably not. You gave up sleep. You wouldn't be.
No. I often wonder if we shouldn't all get together for 5 days and just fast together. Have a group fast, And we'll call it the control of the emotional body. It'll be a seminar, on the control of the emotional body, featuring a group fast.
You heard about the recent sweat lodge, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, the sweat lodge, yeah. Let's all go to Arizona. Yeah.
What happened?
Well,
Died.
Really?
he had too great an entrepreneurial attitude, crowding 50 in a sweat lodge after fasting and not letting them out and all the rest of it. So I imagine there could be a lawsuit. Just maybe. Would you say? Just maybe? Okay. Okay, so cyclic meditation, establish the communication, go to India. He says in India, it's much, I don't know, if he's been to the India I know, I don't know much about it, but he says that occultly the atmosphere is more settled. So all of these occult processes can go forward with less resistance. But there's a lot of pollution, a lot of noise, and...
a lot of people who are all of those people spiritually inclined?
I think not.
Well, probably more per percentage than perhaps.
I don't know. Think times have changed. Where have the ancient Indians moved to? We know the ancient Romans moved to England. We're told that, that the English are largely a reincarnation of the Romans. Apparently learned a few things. And who got the Greeks? I wonder.
Oh, what did someone say? The largest Greek population is where? In
New Jersey?
They moved moved somewhere to Costa Rica or to...
But the thing is, we're talking about souls who contributed to the flowering of a culture, and then they move on to other countries often. And maybe the ancient Aryans came into India and it flourished millions of years ago, and they moved on too. See, so there's always a wave of progressive people. And, you can't just localize them in one country. Nor when a country flowers can you say that its original occupants in soul terms are still there afterwards.
The ancient Atlanteans came here.
Well, pretty much all of the world was Atlantis, and America is the center of the old Atlantean continent. We are told that America is the center of the old Atlantean continent, the United States. Interesting, right?
I think Besson Leadbeater said that the 6 sub-race will be coming from New Zealand, Australia, and the sunnier parts of the desert southwest and California.
Yeah, let's see. He did say that the new colonies, Atlantis continent, old. Let's see if this is. The United States of America was the center of old Atlantis. Look at that. Everybody thinks that Atlantis sunk, and DK says that the USA was the center of old Atlantis. What's this about Texas in the watermark here? I know, no more Texas jokes, no more golf jokes. It's all over, right? Okay. And hence inherited a psychic and ancient religious form which was existent and potently alive in that part of the world for many centuries. So I think a lot of the New Age movement is picking up on the old Atlantean trends. And there are many sort of let your emotion go type of counseling, which I think is not Aryan in its nature. Of course, the Aryan idea has been abused, but you see how the distortions can contain a grain of truth. These guys read the secret doctrine, and they're selfish, and they're smart, and they're proud, and they read it their own way. And they become the Aryans, and everybody else becomes whatever. But still, the element of purification is there. Look at some of these Black Lodge types working towards the second initiation of purification. They're going to purify the whole race, right? Not themselves, right? But they're going to purify humanity for the greater glory of, not the whole, whatever, Germany.
That's an example of what DK was just writing, that don't let the secrets out. They will be destroyed.
Yeah, he's watching the leaks, but then it's a narrow, because if you don't let out some of the inner workings, then you get alienation. Look, I often think that Pythagoras' community, I don't know, could it have survived, but there was a certain elitism, a certain separation of the Pythagorean community from the surrounding communities, which didn't know what they were up to. So naturally, being human, assumed the worst. There's this noble middle path about revelation, and Master Moria calls it speaking proportionately. Speaking proportionately. I'm waiting till Lynn comes back. Could he be eating our food in the other room? I just want to know. Okay, well, we have...
What does it mean when you say the United States of America is the center of old Atlantis? Is there a new Atlantis or a less?
Well, this jolly old Atlantis, It's just old Atlantis, yeah.
You were right.
But,
you were right.
This is disturbing.
I don't know that
He ate it all, did he?
He put in writing the names in every part.
But by the way, there was old Atlantis. Old Atlantis began when? How many years ago?
9.
3 billion.
4.
6? I don't know.
4.
It's such an obvious answer. 12 million years ago. That was good. Yeah, that was old Atlantis, and it was overlapping in Lemuria. Now, Philip says, see how I think of you guys are the same, that 4 million years ago, the last part of Lemuria disappeared except for just some vestiges of the Aboriginals. And that was the Great War in Atlantis, and the Aryan race began, all kind of together. So Lemuria was destroyed by fire, volcanic action. And Atlantis was undergoing these various sinkings, but the last major sinking was 800,000 years ago, and maybe those were those islands, Rutya and Datya, was that how they pronounced it? The islands of the sorcerers and the islands of the good guys, you know, big, big islands. I don't know in what particular. 800,000. Now Plato's Atlantis was only 11,000 years ago. That was just small sinking, relatively, in that area near the Mediterranean. Poseidonus, was that what it's called? Poseidonus, something like that. So the Atlantean civilization, in a way, is not over. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, so many people in our Earth right now are not yet true Aryans, and yet, in consciousness, right, the Aryan civilization has begun. It's only been going 1 million years, but Philip says 4 million. He says that when the 5th subrace of the 4th root race began, the 1st subrace of the 5th root race began. Now, but he calls it kind of 5-0. He calls it kind of like an incubation period, 5-0 instead of 5-1. An incubation period in which maybe they were being separated out and the floods were occurring and certain groups were being segregated. Now you can't segregate anybody. You just can't. I mean, if you walked 1,000 miles, you were segregated. But now, you know, in 2 hours the airplane is there. So this is a non-segregated world, and the Manu has to work by different methods. He cannot work so well by geographical segregation, although still to a degree. Australia is pretty far away, and like you said, he was isolating, and in New Zealand and so forth.
But
California, though, no.
I mean, the non-segregation is very important, probably, for the races and people to intermingle.
Yeah. Well, it's the melting pot world in a way. But you know, if the Manu wants to cultivate a new racial type, what does he do? See, and he's going to want to do that. Because, you know, there are qualities in the physicality of people that need to be promoted as providing a major vessel for the new impulse, and those which are not necessary. How does he reject the old forms and preserve and breed new forms? Well, you get eugenics and Nazism. That's what you get if you get a distortion of this method. But obviously the Manu has his own methods, you know, and we cannot second guess him.
I'm just kind of having a realization in that when you look at films in the early days of movie making, and you look at the body types that were available then and that were considered the norm for beauty.
Yeah.
How different they are now. How they transformed, you know, in the Miss America pageants, and you can see the early Miss America pageants,
right,
and what the beauty
was then.
So there is this shifting
of forms.
That is occurring.
Yeah, I think it is, and obviously a greater delicacy is going to be developed, and and seventh ray, resilient, purified bodies, they tell us, are on the way. Very strong, very etherically potent, very responsive to the sun, and so forth. How will this be done? Natural selection, you know? Did any of you see, what's that movie? It's called something like The Origin of Lying, or what's it called? It's a very good movie. It's The Invention of Lying. I would recommend it. The invention, at first you think, oh, what can it possibly be? But you'll see what I'm talking about eugenics if you go to that movie. I won't say anything further about it. The Invention of Lying. And I tell you, it's a very feel-good movie when it's all over, okay? So
Y-I-N-G or L-I-N-G?
Like telling a lie. Yeah.
And so how do you think autism has to do with 5.6 sub-root race, 6 root races? Why Rorick had to really, really concentrate and calm herself, because when she communicated with hierarchy, they were all talking at once.
Who said that?
Rorick.
Who said that?
Helena Rorick.
But who said that?
In her memoirs. I read
in her letter she said, hierarchy is all talking at once.
That's correct.
I feel of course I have some thoughts about something that happened to Helena Rorick, When she started saying that the Tibetan was from the Black Lodge and all the rest of it, there may have been some problems that arose. Okay. I don't know about all talking at once. I have my doubts. Okay, but people can report whatever they experience. All right, we have finished rule. But and we had to delay a little bit here. We could have raced on to rule 2, but I didn't think it was a good idea. No, just breathe it in. The solar angel collects himself, scatters not his force, but in meditation deep communicates with his reflection. Okay, over and out.